Chapter 114. Li Onping and Song Bang fought chaotically all the way, and in 4 minutes, they had already crossed more than 30 kilometers. The place under their feet was getting more and more remote and sparsely populated. After a burst of red sword light, Song Bang exerted force with his feet and shot toward the ground again. Li Onping stopped in midair and let himself fall, watching Song Bang gradually turn into a black shadow in the distance. Even with Li Onping's physique, he felt that he couldn't take it anymore. Is it time for him to activate his ability again? Just like just now. Li Onping thought, I can't go on like this. My attacks are ineffective against him. If this goes on, I'll be dragged to death. Not only was his physical strength declining, but even the soul energy from healing was rapidly depleted in one battle after another. In addition, Li Onping had used all the souls he had absorbed to strengthen himself. At this moment, he only had about 100 portions of soul energy left. If Li Onping didn't kill Song Bang this time, while he couldn't activate his ability, then when the next bullet time was activated, the person who would die would be Li Onping. I have to find a way to find the flaw in his ability. Otherwise, he'll use up all my soul energy. Thinking of this, Li Onping used void treading and rushed towards Song Bang with a white wave of air. Boom! Boom! With 2 consecutive loud sounds, Song Bang and Li Onping landed on a lawn one after another. They smashed 2 big holes in the lawn. Even Li Onping was seriously injured after falling to the ground from such a high altitude. More than 20 portions of soul energy were instantly used to heal his injuries. A few seconds later, he jumped up and jumped towards Song Bang, who had also stood up. This time, he didn't use his full speed, only less than half. But even so, Song Bang was no longer in the state of bullet time. For Li Onping, he was still as slow as a snail. In this situation where he was not moving at supersonic speed, he had more time to think instead of fully controlling his body. Based on what happened last time, he was in this state for about a minute. We have to hurry. The Song Bang in front of him was like a stone man. Facing the high-speed attack of Li Onping, he stood motionless, waiting to be slaughtered. However, this time, Li Onping did not use a saber. Instead, he punched Song Bang's chin, sending him flying into the air. My attacks can affect him. Yes, that's right. He can attack me, and I can attack him. He was lying before. He's not really invincible. It's just that for some reason, my attacks are ineffective against him. Why are my attacks ineffective? His fist could send it flying, but the power of his fist could not cause any harm to its body. Why is that? Thinking of this, Li Onping leaped into the air, grabbed Song Bang's head, and dragged it down, smashing it against the ground. With a bang, a huge pit was formed in the ground. However, Song Bang's forehead remained unscathed. Material objects can also affect him. It's not a problem with the high-frequency knife. His heartbeat and breathing don't have any changes either. Suddenly, Li Onping's gaze narrowed as he thought of something. From the beginning to the end, his breathing and heartbeat have been very, very slow. Moreover, there's almost no change in the rhythm. This is abnormal for a body moving. For example, Li Onping himself, in order to maintain such intense movements, his heart needed to keep pumping nutrients, and it kept beating like a bomb. Li Onping then recalled how Feng Xingjian had taken out and activated the flash grenade while he was at supersonic speed. His developed brain was working at high speed, continuously analyzing the situation before him. Even at supersonic speed, he's able to control every minute movement exquisitely. He's not like me, who can only control my movements crudely because I'm too fast. Li Onping then looked at Song Bang's body. There's no change in his pores either. There's not even a drop of sweat coming out. Thinking of this, Li Onping grabbed the high-frequency knife with his right hand, grabbed Song Bang's neck with his left hand, and pierced the knife towards Song Bang's forehead. There's about 50 seconds left. I'll have to hurry. Thinking of this, he moved at full speed. The high-frequency knife's blade let out a sharp whistle, and it pierced through Song Bang's head. Then he pulled out the high-frequency knife. There was no change in Feng Xingjian's forehead. Again, if I'm right, Li Onping stabbed at Song Bang again and again, while his other hand grabbed onto Song Bang's neck, making it impossible for him to break free. After a short 10 over seconds, the red gleam of the knife connected together like a waterfall, connecting Li Onping's right hand and Song Bang's forehead. Song Bang felt as if his head had been stabbed thousands of times by Fang Xingjian's knife. However, he was unable to activate his bullet time, and his strength was not as great as Fang Xingjian's. Therefore, he was still unable to break free. He slashed at Fang Xingjian twice, but these two slashes were too slow in Li Onping's eyes. His left hand slapped out on Song Bang's palms, sending both knives flying. Song Bang struggled to dodge, but he was unable to stop Li Onping's knife from stabbing into Song Bang's head. He's not as strong as me, so he won't be able to break free. In fact, after he activates his ability, I might be able to grab onto him like this, preventing him from breaking free. Thinking of this, Li Onping's right hand sped up again. The gleam of the knife connected together and stabbed into Song Bang's forehead. The two of them were entangled for another 10 over seconds. There were only 27 seconds left before Song Bang could activate his ability again. Suddenly, Li Onping stopped. He stared at Song Bang's forehead and smiled. Song Bang sneered and said, "It's useless. You won't be able to kill me. You'll only be slowly exhausted to death by me." That's not necessarily true. Li Onping looked at Fang Xingjian's forehead. In the middle of his forehead, there was a tiny wound that was smaller than a pore. Even Song Bang himself did not notice it. As expected, he has adjusted the flow of time. The time river immortal body could be immune to damage by slowing down the flow of time. However, this immunity was clearly not limitless. After Li Onping stabbed Song Bang's forehead thousands of times, the damage caused by each stab was extended to over 1,000 years. This made it so that each attack could only cause very, very small damage. It was so small that even Song Bang himself could not detect it. He could only rely on his body's self-healing to recover. However, when thousands or tens of thousands of stab attacks landed on the same spot, countless tiny wounds erupted at the same time, finally resulting in a qualitative change. Although he still did not seriously injure Song Bang, and the wounds were completely insignificant, Li Onping understood his opponent's ability. There were only 25 seconds left before Song Bang's bullet time could be activated again. Although he knew the mystery of his opponent's ability, Li Onping had to slash for so long to cause such damage. It would probably take him days to kill Fang Xingjian. If Song Bang discovered Li Onping's goal and began to struggle and escape, it would take even longer. Moreover, once bullet time was activated, Song Bang would be able to attack Li Onping. With Li Onping's current number of souls, Song Bang would be able to exhaust him to death after activating his ability a few more times. Just as Li Onping was feeling troubled, an explosion suddenly sounded in the sky. Song Bang and Li Onping looked up at the same time. They saw a few bolts of lightning streaking across the sky. The surroundings were unknowingly covered by dark clouds. A few drops of water hit their faces. "It's gonna rain?" Li Onping was stunned. The next moment, he suddenly laughed out loud. "What are you laughing about?" Song Bang did not know why, but he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. "I see." Li Onping looked at Song Bang and smiled. "You're dead meat." At this time, there were only 22 seconds left before Song Bang could activate bullet time. Li Onping held Song Bang in his left hand and the high-frequency knife in his right hand. He jumped up and used Void Step continuously in mid-air, stepping on waves of air as he rushed into the sky. A loud sound rang out, and the wind kept blowing. Song Tian only felt the strong wind blowing against his face as the surrounding air became colder and colder. What is he trying to do? 10 seconds later, Li Onping had already brought Song Bang to an altitude of several thousand meters. The lightning streaked across the sky above their heads, as if it was just passing by in front of them. At this time, there were only 11 seconds left before Song Bang could activate bullet time. Li Onping held the high-frequency knife in his hand tightly and pointed the tip at the sky. "Are you crazy? What are you trying to do?" Song Bang shouted. "The speed at which electricity travels is the same as the speed of light," Li Onping said calmly. "Even if it hits a human body, the speed at which it travels through the medium is definitely greater than 200,000 kilometers per second. How much do you think you can slow him down? This kid, Song Bang looked at Li Onping in disbelief. When did he understand my ability? Could it be just now? How is this possible? Rumble. A flash of lightning lit up beside the two of them, giving Song Bang a fright. The high-frequency knife had both electricity and metal. In such an environment, it was too easy for it to be struck by lightning. Hurry up and get down. Are you crazy? Song Bang said in exasperation. Although he was not sure if lightning could kill him, Song Bang could not deny the possibility. At least 10 years ago, someone had used lightning to deal with him, causing him an unforgettable fear. And for someone like him who had power, influence, and a long life ahead of him, the last thing he was willing to do was risk his life. Even if he had the dignity of a powerful person and the dignity of a level 5 ability user, when faced with the possibility of death, Song Bang was no different from a normal person. Faced with Song Bang's pleading, Li Onping opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Song Bang could only vaguely make out the shape of his mouth, which seemed to be too late. Right now, there were only 5 seconds left before Song Bang could fire his bullet. Song Bang looked at Li Onping's unmoved appearance and said anxiously, "Didn't you want to take revenge on Wei Shishir? I was the one who sent her to the Mist Federation. If I die, you won't be able to find her for the rest of your life." Li Onping looked at Song Bang with a cold smile, not moved in the slightest. The next moment, boom, bang, the lightning in the sky crazily rushed towards the two of them. Bolt after bolt of lightning struck the high-frequency knife. It was as if they were striking a lightning rod. No less than 10 bolts of lightning struck one after another. Then, the electric current spread through the two of them at a speed of over 200,000 kilometers per second. Li Onping felt as if his heart had stopped beating in that instant. His entire body felt as if it was being torn apart. On the other hand, Song Bang's situation was even worse. At the beginning, he could still rely on his mental energy to resist the first and second bolts of lightning. But after that, over 10 bolts of lightning struck one after another. Soon, he couldn't take it anymore. With a miserable cry, large patches of burns appeared on his body. His central nervous system was damaged, and his breathing stopped. His heart also stopped beating at the same time. In theory, he should already be dead, but his entire body began to undergo a terrifying transformation. Fire injuries, frostbite, knife wounds, gunshot wounds, aging, all kinds of injuries exploded on Song Bang's body. All the injuries he had accumulated over the years exploded at the same time. In the end, not even a corpse was left behind. Song Bang was reduced to a pile of dust in an instant. When Li Onping saw this, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then he felt a vast amount of energy flowing into his body and began to heal his body. He relaxed his mind and lost consciousness. At the same time, the lightning continued to strike his body. Every strike was like a baseball bat hitting his body, causing Li Onping to fall to the ground. Chapter 115. 3 days had passed, and with the disappearance of Li Onping and Song Bang, Tianjing still seemed to be maintaining its usual peaceful situation on the surface. But secretly, the entire upper echelon of Xia was in a state of panic. If they really lost another level 5 ability user, it would mean that they were at an absolute disadvantage in the war against the Ice Fortress. On the other hand, the destruction caused by the battle between ability users was real. Even though the government had tried their best to block the news, they still couldn't stop the rumors from spreading, especially after the news spread out of Tianjing City and spread throughout Xia. Once it reached the ears of those people or organizations that even Xia Dragonfinch had to be on guard against, the situation would be even worse. After Song Bang went missing, the remaining members of the Song family kept shrinking their power and started to use all kinds of channels, hoping that they wouldn't be dealt with in the future. As for Xia Yunyun, Sun Hao, Qin Duo, and Li Qian, the 4 of them were also temporarily under house arrest in Xia Dragonfinch's headquarters because of Song Bang's disappearance. But there were also a small number of people who still believed that Song Bang was only temporarily gone, and their behavior was still arrogant and despotic. Sancheng walked on the road leading to the prison door, with a plump middle-aged man following beside him. As he walked, he couldn't help but complain, "Humph, little Yang, you can see who's reliable at the crucial moment. Usually those ability users are all as obedient as dogs under my brother's command, but now, at the crucial moment, they can't even be found." The plump man walking beside him nodded and said charmingly, "Yes, yes." Sancheng looked at the plump man and said, "Little Yang, don't worry. When my brother comes back, I'll definitely talk to him about this matter. Don't worry." The plump man smiled and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you." As the two of them were talking, they walked to an electronic door, but were stopped by a soldier. "Sorry, sir. Please show me your pass." Fatty nodded. He took out a card from his pocket and scanned it on the sensor next to the electronic door. In the end, a red light flashed, indicating that entry was prohibited. How is this possible? Fatty didn't believe it, so he continued to refresh a few more times. What's going on? Why am I banned from entering? The soldier at the side looked at the fatty nervously and said, "I'm sorry, sir. You don't have permission to enter this place. I'm Yang Guang. Do you know me?" The fat man looked angrily at the red light on the screen and suddenly said to the soldier, "This is Mr. Song Chung, General Song Bang's younger brother. Do you know? Quickly open the door and let us in." "But the rules say that no one can enter without permission." Song Chung looked at the soldier coldly. "You don't know how to appreciate favors." When the fatty heard this, he snorted coldly and slapped the soldier's face, knocking him out on the ground. His face was swollen. He took out the soldier's card and scanned it. With a flash of green light, the electronic door opened. A voice came from the soldier's earpiece. "Hello. Hey, 032. Why did you open the door? You didn't see that you had this mission." But the soldier couldn't answer him. Song Chung and Yang Guang walked through the door slowly and saw electronic cells appear before them. The cells near the corridor were all huge floor-to-ceiling glass windows, so they could easily see what the prisoners were doing. The two of them walked for a while and stopped in one of the cells. Song Chung looked at the woman in the cell with a covetous expression. She had a slender figure, a slender waist, and perfectly round and straight thighs. Even though she was wearing a gray prison uniform, it still couldn't hide the girl's natural beauty. It was Xia Yunyun, who had been captured and put under house arrest. Song Chung swiped the soldier's card and opened the old door. He walked towards Xia Yunyun with a smile. "Yunyun, long time no see." Xia Yunyun frowned and looked at Song Chung. "What are you doing here? Isn't Uncle here to see you?" Song Chung said, "But there's a difference in our statuses now, so I'll be direct. Do you want me to take care of you? If you want to side with me, I can get you out of here right now." "Scram. What did you say?" "UB*TCH. Song Chung rushed up. "You're just a prisoner now. If it wasn't for the fact that you're quite good-looking, would I have come to look for you?" Yang Guang, who was behind him, laughed and thought, "Don't tell me I'm going to see a live sex scene here." But Xia Yunyun is an ability user after all. Her physical attributes aren't weak. Old man Song, don't lose out. Just as he thought of this, the entire cell suddenly turned dark, as if it had sunk into darkness. Regardless of whether it was Yang Guang or Song Chung, both of them were blinded by darkness. Other than darkness, they could not see anything. "What's going on?" Two more thumping sounds were heard, and Xia Yunyun's eyes lit up. The darkness had dissipated. She saw a man with short black hair standing in front of her. Xia Yunyun could recognize that this man was one of the people who had sent them to the Xia Long K base back then. The other three people who had come along with him were one with blonde hair and another with a buzz cut. However, the young man didn't seem to be in good shape. He put his left hand behind his back, but Xia Yunyun could see that this left hand kept on trembling. At the same time, the young man with short black hair looked at the fatty nervously and said, "Fatty Yang, I looked at the surveillance footage after receiving the notice. Why are you interested in coming here?" It was clear that the two of them had exchanged blows in the darkness earlier, and the young man was at a disadvantage. "Lu Sheng, if you get out of my way now, I can pretend that nothing happened," the fatty said arrogantly. This is my prisoner. I can't just hand him over to you." "What do you mean by your prisoner?" "This is some of my big brother ordered to be captured. Tiano was killed by this bitch." Songchen glared at Lu Sheng and said, "Get out of my way. I'm here today, on the orders of the clan, to take him away." Lu Sheng didn't move. He just stared at Yang Guang. Just as the situation was getting more and more tense, a person came in from outside the door. It was the young man with buzz cut who went to capture people with Lu Sheng last time. "Senior Yang, do me a favor and wait for Elder Song to come back." Hong Fangzheng. Yang Guang glanced at the young man, snorted and left. Songchen was left alone. He glared at Xia Yunyun and followed him. So Hong Fangzheng and Lu Sheng nodded to Xia Yunyun and left the cell. The disturbance disappeared. After walking out of the electronic door, Hong Fangzheng couldn't help but ask, "Is it worth it? Who knows if what the Qian Duo said is true or not? Do you really think that Li Onping has something to do with Song Bang's disappearance? Whether or not Li Onping really attacked Song generals, and whether or not Song generals' disappearance really has something to do with him, it's not wrong to protect our prisoners appropriately, right?" Lu Sheng replied. "Besides, Qian Duo doesn't seem to be lying. If Li Onping really attacked Song Bang and caused so much damage, then Qian Duo wouldn't be lying. Then his strength is completely beyond our imagination. If it's Song Bang who comes back, it's fine. At most, he will listen to his idiot brother and punish us a little. But if it's Li Onping, once Xia Yunyun and the others are hurt, I'm afraid we will also be the target of his revenge. Just treat it as insurance, just in case." There were countless undercurrents in Tianjing City, and all kinds of schemes were constantly being played out. Many hidden, ambitious people, regardless of whether they had the ability or not, took advantage of the fact that the Xia Dragonfinch's power had fallen and stepped into the limelight. Far away in a mountainous area 40 kilometers away from Tianjing City, Li Onping was lying quietly in a patch of grass. He had been lying there for 3 days and 3 nights. A little bird perched on a branch and couldn't help but look at Li Onping in the grass. This was probably the first time it saw such a strange animal. The little bird jumped from branch to branch, but couldn't help but look curiously at the motionless Li Onping in the grass. When it found that the other party didn't move, it finally couldn't help but fly down and land on Li Onping's chest. A crackling sound. Just as the little bird's claws landed on Li Onping's body, a trace of electric light flashed across its body and sent the little bird flying. When the little bird landed on the ground, only a pile of charred corpses was left. A moment later, a nimble mountain cat darted out from the grass and ran away with the little bird's charred body in its mouth. This was already the 3rd small animal corpse that the mountain cat had found in the past few days. Because of this, it would run to Li Onping's vicinity whenever it had the time to see if there were any new corpses. As for the serene and unconscious creature in the mountain cat's eyes, it had become something more terrifying than a tiger. Chapter 116. 10 days later, into Xia Dragonfinch's base, 200 meters underground, several people in blue and white uniforms sat around the table in a huge conference room. At the very top of the table was a huge screen. On it was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. However, in front of this man, no matter if it was Yang Guang, Lu Sheng, Hong Fangzheng, or the other ability users, none of them dared to act rashly. This was because even though this man looked very ordinary, to the extent that he didn't have any abilities, just his status alone was enough to make them look up to him. The current emperor of Xia, one of the 9 royal families, the head of the Wang family, Wang Chong. At the conference table, a white-haired man was currently reporting to Wang Chong. Ever since Xia Laikong fell into a coma and Song Bang went missing, the Xia Dragonfinch, this important ability user organization, was temporarily led directly by Wang Chong. The white-haired man was the one in charge of the Xia Dragonfinch's intelligence. His name was Lu Feng. Even though there are no clear signs, there have indeed been a lot of foreigners entering Tianjing recently. There were also quite a few ice fortress teams that broke through our defenses in the north. Their whereabouts are currently unknown. However, what can be confirmed is that the other side's 4 level 5 ability users shouldn't have entered the country yet. Also, the 3 level 4 ability users that were temporarily transferred from other places arrived yesterday. They're currently resting in the base. Ice Fortress. Wang Cheng on the other side of the screen frowned. Keep a close eye on Pluto's group of 4. If there's any news about them, immediately inform me. In a few days, I will transfer the East First Army over. You guys cooperate with them properly. Airports, buses, trains, all of these places need to be closely watched. If anyone from Ice Fortress enters, I need to know all of their whereabouts. Yang Guang said, "What about Xia Yinyun, Qian Duo, Sun Hao, and Li Qian?" After all, Li Qian and Xia Yinyun were related to Song Tian's death. Although Song Generals was missing, they couldn't let it go easily. I suggest that Qian Duo and Sun Hao be demoted. As for Xia Yinyun and Li Qian, they will all be handed over to the judicial authorities. Lu Sheng said directly, "I don't agree with this. I think we should wait for Song Generals to come back first." Yang Guang frowned. He didn't understand why Lu Sheng had been trying to stop this. If the other party really wanted to wait for Song Generals to come back, they should be trying to please the Song family now. Wang Cheng, who was behind the screen, heard the argument between the two, but his expression didn't change. In his heart, he thought of Song Bang and Li Anping. So he said, "There's no need to say anything more. This is Song Bang's family matter. Let's wait for Song Bang to come back before we talk about it." What he did not say was that they should wait for Li Anping to come back before they talk about it. Hearing Wang Cheng's order, the two stopped arguing. After discussing a few more issues, Wang Cheng turned off the screen. He looked out the window, sighed, and ordered, "Let Antero in." "Yes," someone outside answered. After a while, a man came in a hurry. "Your Majesty, no need to be so polite." Wang Cheng stared at him and said, "Is there any news?" "No." Antero's face was haggard. It was obvious that he had been very busy during this time. "We haven't found anything. We found the place where they last fought, but we haven't found any bodies or people." Hearing this, Wang Cheng's face became even uglier. On the other side, after Wang Cheng turned off the screen, the people in the conference room also dispersed. However, Wang Cheng took 2 people to stop Lu Sheng and Hong Fangzheng, who were about to leave. "Lu Sheng, I heard that you've been going to the prison quite frequently recently. It seems that you're fated to be there." After speaking, he didn't wait for Lu Sheng and Hong Fangzheng's reply and left with his 2 companions. Hong Fangzheng looked at the backs of the 3 people and curled his lips. They really think that without a level 5 ability user, they can be the boss? Lu Sheng still wanted to say something, but the lights in the conference room suddenly dimmed and flickered twice. The entire room was connected to the backup power supply. Red lights flashed everywhere, but this red light didn't last long. After about 4 or 5 seconds, it also went out. This meant that the backup power supply of the Xia Long K base also failed. Lu Sheng and Hong Fangzheng's expressions changed. Without saying anything, they rushed out of the conference room one after another. The corridor was dark and full of people walking around. Lu Sheng took out a phone and pressed speed dial. What happened? The power supply failed. The backup power supply also stopped. No enemies found. Someone died. Before he finished speaking, a huge tremor suddenly came from below the base, as if something had exploded. Lu Sheng and Hong Fangzheng's expressions were serious. Even though they didn't say anything, their many years of tacit understanding made them do the same thing. They rushed towards the emergency exit together. 10 minutes later, all of the electronic doors in the underground prison were opened. The guard that was originally on duty was already lying in a pool of blood. He had been killed by the prisoners that swarmed out. When they walked through the electronic doors, they saw Xia Yinyun, Qian Duo, Sun Hao, and Li Qian all staying together in a room. There were a few prisoner corpses at the door. Clearly, there were prisoners that wanted to break in, but they were killed by them. Li Qian looked at the dark corridor and said worriedly, "What's going on? Why is there a power outage?" "Someone attacked the base," Qian Duo said coldly. Sun Hao was frightened. "How is that possible? Someone attacked here? Nothing is impossible." Qian Duo stood up. "The headquarters has 3 backup power sources, but none of them have been activated. The door to the prison is used for both mechanical and electronic systems. Even if there is no power source, it can't be opened automatically. Someone must have controlled the circuit and opened the prison. Hearing his analysis, Li Qian and the other two became even more worried. The Great Xia Dragonfinch was a national-level military base and the headquarters of an ability user organization. It was simply a super fortress. If someone was able to attack a base like this, and they were able to achieve some success, one could imagine the strength of the invaders. It's too dangerous to stay here. Someone has to go out and check the situation. Qian Duo thought for a moment and said, "It's too dangerous to go out together. Sun Hao, you stay here with the other two and protect them." After saying that, he walked out. "I'll be back in half an hour. If I don't come back after half an hour, you guys can leave." Sun Hao and the other two nodded as they listened to Qian Duoduo's footsteps gradually disappear into the darkness. "We have to be careful. It's too easy to ambush in a dark environment. Also, whether it's the Xia Dragonfinch or the people attacking the base, they can all ambush me. We have to be careful." Qian Duo nimbly moved forward in the darkness. Relying on his familiarity with the Xia Long K base, he walked all the way to the guardroom. Along the way, he encountered a few prisoners who had escaped but were either lost or injured. All of them were killed by Qian Duo with his bare hands. It was a simple and effective action. There wasn't even a trace of noise. Qian Duo carefully walked towards the guardroom. When he walked past a corner, he suddenly saw shadows moving in front of him. A group of soldiers rushed over. Their footsteps were scattered, and the searchlights on their guns were swaying randomly in all directions. They're escaping? Just as Qian Duo realized this, he saw a shadow pass through the crowd. Blood splattered from the soldiers' bodies, and in an instant, the ground was full of broken limbs and remains. Then, he felt a pair of eyes looking at him. He had a head of platinum hair, a strong body like a bear, and a white cape. There was also a circle of blue electric light, like a neon light, surrounding the man's body, illuminating a 20-meter radius around him. With a faint laugh, the man had already crossed more than 10 meters and arrived in front of Qian Duo. Cold sweat instantly covered Qian Duo's body. His legs trembled uncontrollably. He wanted to turn around and leave, but he realized that he couldn't even move a single step. The man's smile was like a nightmare that kept appearing in his mind. The man looked at Qian Duo in amusement and slowly moved the dagger to his neck. But when he saw the prisoner's uniform, he stopped in his tracks. "Go that way." The man pointed in the direction of the tunnel. "Go that way, and you can escape." After saying this, the man's figure disappeared. But Qian Duo still didn't dare to move. Fear was like a poisonous snake, tightly coiling around his heart. It wasn't until a minute later that he slowly knelt on the ground. A name kept popping up in his mind. Lei Di. It's Lei Di. In the forest, a lynx carefully scurried out of bush. It looked unusually tired, and its stomach rumbled. It felt hungry. It didn't know why, but it hadn't found any animal carcasses in the past few days. So it decided to get closer to that strange person. The lynx slowly moved its feet, looking left and right from time to time. It was on guard against all possible dangers. After a full 10 minutes, the strange man came into view. He was still lying on the ground, unconscious. But unlike before, there was a little bird on the strange man's body. The little bird was jumping around on his body, but didn't seem to be in any danger. The lynx looked curiously for a while, and finally couldn't help but walk towards the strange man. It walked to the strange man's side and slowly stretched out its head, wanting to smell it with its nose. But in the next moment, the strange man's hand suddenly reached out to its chest. The lynx let out a strange cry and disappeared into the bushes. Li Onping, who was on the ground, opened his eyes and looked at the struggling bird in his hand. So he let go of his hand and let the bird fly away. Chapter 117. How long was I asleep for? Li Onping sat up and looked around. He was in a lush and verdant forest. Sunlight passed through the gaps between the trees, scattering down on his body, giving him a type of warm feeling. After sitting for a while, Li Onping slowly stood up. Perhaps it was because he slept for a bit too long, but he still felt a bit groggy, his entire body's reaction speed also a bit slow. I need to find a way to find out how long I was unconscious for. Li Onping looked around at the forest, and then he raised his head to look at the sky. Also, I need to hurry back. I wonder how Li Qian, Sun Hao, and the others are doing. He fished out his hand and reached into his tactical pocket, only to discover that forget about his phone being completely broken. Even the black combat uniform he was wearing had already turned into tattered strips of cloth. Li Onping frowned. He exerted force with a leap, instantly jumping more than 50 meters into the air. He randomly chose a place, and then he exerted force with a step. The sound of a sonic boom resounded through the sky. Li Onping already flew into the distance, leaving behind a white wave of air. As soon as he flew, he discovered that he was different. First of all, his physical fitness had already become 14. 4 in strength, 13. 5 in speed, and 15. 4 in stamina. Among them, Song Bang's soul contributed the most. It was clear that as a level 5 ability user, he was much more powerful than Qing Chan, and the help he provided to Li Onping was also much greater. However, a small part of the increase was because of the many ordinary people he accidentally injured in Tianjin City. However, after experiencing countless massacres and then absorbing Qing Chan and Song Bang, 2 level 5 ability users, right now, he already didn't mind it as much. Compared to regretting accidentally injuring the lives of strangers, he instead paid more attention to the changes in his own body. His nerve reflexes seemed to have improved greatly. The originally blurry feeling from flying at high speed already disappeared, and his senses towards his surroundings became countless times clearer. Every muscle, every large tendon was under his control. His reflexes, reaction speed, and concentration were all improved greatly. Under such circumstances, the limits of his physical body were once again released, and his speed took a new leap. It turned out that Li Onping was constantly bombarded by lightning when he was fighting Song Bang. His body had suffered all kinds of burns, but the biggest problem was that the bioelectric signals all over Li Onping's body had been severely blocked after encountering the electric current. Bioelectricity was used by human tissues to transmit information and control physiological functions. After being struck by lightning, Li Onping's bioelectricity was blocked, which led to cardiac arrest, muscle spasms, brainwaves disorder, and finally death. Fortunately, he had absorbed Song Bang's soul energy. Apart from strengthening his body, this energy was also used to repair his body. Therefore, in the tug-of-war between lightning's constant destruction and soul energy's repair, Li Onping's body was strengthened again. His bioelectric signal system was also constantly modified and changed. All of this caused his reflexes to be greatly strengthened. His originally terrifyingly fast speed, on the basis of the improvement of his body's fitness, once again took a new leap. Li Onping's speed in the sky directly exceeded 500 meters per second. Everywhere he passed, it was as if the clouds were swept away by the wind. The ground constantly changed under his feet, and 10 seconds later, a small village had already appeared under his feet. The pitter-patter of raindrops fell to the ground, as if wanting to drown the entire imperial city. At 3 o'clock in the morning, because of the sudden attack, the imperial palace's conference room was now somewhat chaotic. There were many Xia Dragonfinch agents in blue and white uniforms and soldiers in green combat uniforms here. Originally, military meetings related to ability users were all held in Xia Longke base, but this time, the situation was too dangerous. Meanwhile, Xia Dragonfinch's base was no longer safe, so the meeting location was temporarily moved to within the imperial city. Apart from people like Lu Sheng, Hong Fangzheng, Yang Guang, and Lu Feng, even Emperor Wang Chong crawled out of bed at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. In this attack, a total of 300 people died, including 2 level 4 ability users, but we didn't even get to see the enemy's appearance. Lu Feng's expression was heavy as he said, "The enemy's strength isn't small. To be honest, I even suspect that there's a level 5 ability user involved." Level 5 ability user. Wang Chong's face was ashen. If there really was a level 5 ability user who came to Tianjin, Then apart from mutual destruction, Tianjing already didn't have any ability to stop the other party. He then asked, "The surveillance cameras didn't capture anything?" Lu Sheng looked at the blonde youngster behind him, ordering, "Momo, you can speak." The blonde youngster stood up. The other party's methods were extremely clean and efficient, cutting off the power supply and 3 backup power supplies before attacking. However, before that, all of the surveillance cameras were turned off. To be honest, even now, I still don't know how they did it. Lu Sheng on the side continued, "We only found our people among the corpses, not the other party's corpses. However, we can't rule out the possibility that they transported the corpses away. All of the blood and corpses have already been sent for analysis. However, apart from this, we don't have any other clues. There aren't any clues of supernatural abilities, nor are we able to find any gunpowder weapons. The other party only used cold weapons to kill our people. Without a doubt, they are definitely experts." Yang Guang continued, "Apart from killing people, they also released the prisoners from the 12th underground floor. Fortunately, because the equipment operated independently from the base, the 4th-level criminals weren't released. Therefore, apart from a small number of people who were killed on the spot, the rest of the prisoners have all been captured. Not only did they release the prisoners, according to the computer records, they also stole a large amount of top-secret information from the base. They burned down a few warehouses and took away a few new machine guns from the arsenal. 2 hours ago, we discovered machine guns on the highway in the south. The bullets were already used up, but we didn't find any fingerprints. Also, it's worth mentioning that they also went to the underground power room and completely destroyed a generator." Hong Fangzheng said. Lu Feng smiled helplessly. "As much as I don't want to admit it, I still have to say it. Your Majesty, up until now, we have already suffered billions of losses, but we don't even know who the other party is, how many of them came, what abilities they have, how they came in and how they left. We don't even know anything. General Xia has fallen into a deep sleep. Song General's whereabouts are unknown. I think the situation has already reached the most dangerous point. Even we might have to prepare for the worst." Wang Cheng, who was sitting at the top, didn't answer, and a deathly silence gradually filled the entire conference room. Suddenly, Lu Sheng took out his phone. Just as everyone was feeling dissatisfied, Yang Guang spoke first. "Lu Sheng, pay attention to where you are. At this critical moment, do you think you're in your own home?" However, Lu Sheng's eyes widened, and his expression became unprecedentedly serious. "Everyone, I think most of you here know the Qian Duo. The prison guard reported that when the base was attacked, he saw the attackers." "Oh? Who are the attackers? Why wasn't the Qian Duo attacked? Why did he only say it now?" Wang Cheng slammed his palm on the table. Although he was just a normal person, the power of his palm was only enough to slap the table. However, everyone present quieted down at the same time, and no one dared to say another word. Wang Cheng looked at Lu Sheng and said, "Lu Sheng, tell us what the Qian Duo said." "Okay." Lu Sheng nodded and swallowed a mouthful of saliva, as if he still didn't believe it. According to the Qian Duo, he only saw one attacker at the time. According to the way the attacker attacked, and that person's appearance, physique, everything matches the information about. Lu Sheng took a deep breath and said, "Everything matches with Lady's information." Although this may sound very despairing, it is very possible that we will be facing a level 5 ability user who can control lightning in the most prosperous city in Xia. Crackle. A bolt of lightning cut through the night sky outside the window. Lu Sheng spoke calmly, but everyone present knew that the situation had become unprecedentedly serious. Only, what they didn't know was that the current situation was still far from reaching the worst situation. Li Onping slowly descended to the ground, stepping in the air from time to time to reduce the speed of his descent. When he landed on the ground, apart from a bit of dust, nothing else happened. He followed a dirt road and slowly walked towards the village he saw in the sky. Li Onping originally planned to directly land in the village and then ask a random person for directions. However, after thinking about it, he felt that if he directly descended from the sky, he might cause panic among the villagers. Actually, No matter how panicked the villagers were, he didn't care too much. However, he didn't want to make a simple question become complicated and waste his time. Therefore, he chose to quietly land outside the village. In any case, it was just a few more minutes of walking. After walking into the village, Li Onping casually looked around and discovered that this village was extremely shabby. The villagers all wore tattered clothes, and when they looked at his tattered appearance, their gazes were full of indifference and alienation. He strolled around for a bit and finally found a grocery store. "Boss, may I know where this is? How do I get to Tianjing?" The boss looked at Li Onping and said casually, "You want to go to Tianjing? Go north of 2 mountains and you'll reach Long Lake Town. There are long-distance buses in town that can go to the city. Once you're in the city, you can find a train to Tianjing." Li Onping frowned and said, "Boss, do you have a phone number?" The boss pointed to a dial phone on the side, and there was a line of words on it. 1 yuan per minute. Seeing these words, Li Onping remembered that not only his phone number, but his credit card had also been destroyed in the battle. Moreover, he didn't memorize Sun Hao's or Li Qian's phone numbers at all. They were all saved directly in his phone. He asked helplessly, "Boss, do you know which direction Tianjing is in? Give me the directions." The boss said impatiently, "Tianjing is in the east, of course. Are you going to call or not? If not, don't hinder my business." Chapter 118. The boss said impatiently, "Of course Tianjing is in the east. Are you going to make the call or not? If not, don't hinder my business." Li Onping narrowed his eyes, coldly looking at the boss. He didn't want to waste any more words with him, directly chopping his neck with his hand, and the man fainted. No one in the surroundings noticed, and even if they did, they could only see the boss lying on the table. Normal people wouldn't be able to see Li Onping's movements at all. Actually, with Li Onping's current level 2 ability, his soul absorption range was 50 meters. Against normal people, he could kill them with just a thought. However, he didn't have the habit of killing the innocent. The current Li Onping had gradually deviated from the so-called justice. He didn't have any grudges against killing people, but he still hadn't developed the habit of killing people on sight. Seeing the boss faint, Li Onping grabbed the phone and began to recall the phone number in his mind. Although he didn't specifically memorize Li Qian's phone number, those calls were made by himself. Relying on his superhuman memory, when he began to recall, his mind was like a computer searching, countless images appearing. A few seconds later, the image froze at the moment when he first entered the phone number. Li Onping dialed the number, but the phone on the other side was turned off. He frowned and then tried Sun Hao's phone, but it was still turned off. Then he tried Xia Yunyan's phone, but it was still turned off. He didn't know that, because they were under house arrest, their phones had long been confiscated. After so many days, even if it wasn't turned off, it would have long run out of battery. How could he get through? This time, Li Onping felt that things were troublesome. Li Qian and the others were most likely still caught. After he absorbed Song Bang, his strength increased greatly, and he felt that even level 5 ability users wouldn't be able to deal with him. As for the military, he believed that unless they were hit by nuclear bombs, positron cannons, ion beam weapons, or weapons that could produce ultra-high or ultra-low temperatures, most of the other conventional weapons wouldn't be a threat to him. Even for weapons that could kill him, as long as he prepared enough souls to regenerate, there was nothing to be afraid of. Li Onping had enough of the government's interference and the corruption of the higher-ups. Therefore, he would kill those scum officials. Therefore, after Song Bang framed him, he would go to his door and kill him. It's time for the land beneath my feet to move according to my will. Li Onping was a little excited when he thought of this. No matter how many B** stars I kill, it won't affect the functioning of society much. There will still be people who commit crimes, murder, rape, and robbery. The oppression of the upper echelons on the lower echelons will still be everywhere. I hate this kind of society. Incompetent people relied on their bloodline and background to steal high positions, enjoying benefits that far exceeded that of ordinary people. On the other hand, even if ordinary people were to put in a few times or even a dozen times more effort, their lifetime achievements might not even be 1/10 of what they had achieved. But as long as I control this society, although it may not be perfect, I will make it as fair as possible. And now, Li Onping obviously had a certain amount of power to do this. But before that, he still planned to rescue Li Qian and the others. Li Qian's ability was very useful to him. At the same time, it was also an opportunity for him to show his power to Dxia's government. Thinking of this, Li Onping laughed and flew into the sky. After a loud sound of breaking through the air, he flew toward the town that the boss had just pointed out. Only the village was left in a state of chaos. At 2 o'clock in the morning, more than 10 black cars drove into a manor. The usually quiet manor was brightly lit at this moment. There were armed soldiers everywhere, and even a few military helicopters could be seen flying at a low altitude at the border of the manor. When the car stopped, Lu Sheng, Lu Feng, and the others walked out. There were already people waiting for them in the manor. The group walked into the hall. Before the door was opened, they could smell the smell of blood. The 6th in 2 days. Lu Sheng looked at the scene in the hall and frowned. There were a total of 4 corpses in the hall. 3 of them had their necks cut open and were lying on the sofa. Because the arteries were cut, sticky blood was left all over the floor. The pungent smell kept drilling into Lu Sheng's nose. The other person was lying on the floor with a penetrating wound on his back where his heart was. Unlike Lu Sheng's face that was full of disgust, Lu Feng carefully observed every corner and said slowly, "It's him." He used the same method as in the base. He probably doesn't know that his identity has been exposed. If it wasn't for the Qian Duo seeing him, we probably wouldn't have found out that it was him. Lu Feng's nose twitched a few times. He followed the burnt smell to a corner and squatted down. He reached out his hand to a socket. With a click, the socket was dug out by him, and the wires inside were char-black. Sure enough, he used electricity to move around. That's why the surveillance cameras and the guards didn't find him. Lu Feng's face showed a puzzled expression, but I still don't understand how he got into the base. There should be an independent power source there. The external lines can't be connected. Who knows? Lu Sheng's face was very ugly. Anyone who encountered such an opponent would have a bad expression. He has too many methods to fight in the city. There are too many electrical appliances here. Yeah. Lu Feng suddenly turned to look at the door. The family members of the deceased were crying and making a scene, trying to break in. The other party's status was obviously not low. The guards didn't dare to stop them. "We've seen enough. Let's go first," Lu Feng said. Lu Sheng nodded. The 4 people who died this time were all from the Lu family of the 9 great kings. He didn't have time to tangle with such a big family. In the black car, Lu Feng said, the more people he kills, the higher his status and identity. In the beginning, he was just an ordinary official. But today's dead are all from the 9 great kings. We don't have much time left. If this goes on, the whole of Tianjing will be in chaos. How long do you think we have left? 3 days to a week. Lu Feng murmured, he's testing now. He's testing whether Song generals and Xia generals really can't fight. And the sneak attack on the base obviously gave him 80% confidence. That's why he's becoming more and more unscrupulous now. If Song Bang still doesn't appear in a few days, I'm afraid it'll be time for him to shed all pretense of cordiality. Testing. Lu Sheng smiled bitterly. He's just testing, and it's enough to make us panic. For people died in the hall. The servants didn't discover it until 2 hours later. Now, even His Majesty is hiding in a temporary shelter and cutting off all the external circuits. Lu Feng said, the situation isn't optimistic. To be honest, if the battle continues in the city, I'm afraid we won't have any chance of winning. He shook his head. Our only advantage now is that he might think we haven't discovered his identity. Lu Sheng nodded heavily. In 2 days, including the attack on the base, almost 400 people had died, and this was the result of the enemy not using his full strength. Once the enemy confirmed that there were no level 5 ability users in Tianjing, they would be facing an unscrupulous level 5 ability user with no room for negotiation. Moreover, Lady's ability was most suitable for fighting in a modern city. As for Lady's ability, They were very familiar with it after fighting with the Ice Fortress Fire Dragon Vanguard for many years. Just the fact that he could transform into electricity and move along the city's electrical circuits made him invincible. Once Lei started to destroy everything, just creating a large blackout or a large fire would be enough to disrupt the order of Tianjing. If he were to unleash another thunderstorm, a large portion of Tianjing would probably collapse. However, in a place like the capital, unless it was absolutely necessary, the government would never agree to use weapons of mass destruction. Even if they were to use it, the effect on Lei was unknown. In the past, Tianjing was guarded by 1 or 2 level 5 ability users all year round, so Lei didn't dare to come here rashly. But now, both the Flying General and Zhurong were at the northern border. Facing the Fire Dragon Vanguard's attack, they had no chance to come back. If one of them came back, the entire northern border would collapse. But if they didn't come back, once Tianjing was destroyed by Lei, the situation wouldn't be any better than the northern border. Thinking of this, Lu Sheng smiled maliciously. The people above, including His Majesty, must be having a headache right now. Chapter 119. One day later, at noon, the Xia Dragonfinch's base was still very busy. There were staff members walking around everywhere, and there were also construction teams working nonstop to modify the entire base's electrical circuits. Qian Duo and Sun Hao had already changed into their original uniforms and walked into an office. "You all know the situation, right?" Lu Xing looked at them and said, "The situation is critical now, and we need your help." In fact, with Qian Duo and Sun Hao's strength and position, as well as the fact that they had nothing to do with Song Tian's death, if Xia Laikong was still awake, they wouldn't even be arrested. Even if Xia Laikong wasn't around now, if it wasn't for the pressure from the Song family, they wouldn't have been under house arrest for so long. However, faced with Lady's pressure, even the Song family didn't dare to act arbitrarily. Moreover, there was still no news about Song Bang, which caused people's hearts to be even more unstable. In order to deal with Lady, they couldn't let go of Qian Duo and Sun Hao. Of course, there was another reason. News about the true God religion was gradually spreading. Although it wasn't 100% confirmed that Qin Chan was a level 5 ability user, the scene of his battle with Li Onping was confirmed by many people. Thinking about Song Bang's disappearance and Li Onping's killing of Song Tian, many people had to be careful. What about Xia Yunyun and Li Qian? Sun Hao asked. Lu Sheng shook his head. They can't. They were directly related to Song Tian's death, and the Song family is keeping a close eye on them. In addition, they're too weak, so even if I wanted to exonerate them, I can't do it. Besides, in Tianjing right now, it might be safer to stay in jail. Qian Duo looked a little haggard, and the deep dark circles under his eyes seemed to indicate that he wasn't in good spirits recently. After hearing Lu Sheng's words, he asked with a gloomy face, "Don't tell me you want us to help you deal with Lady." "That's right." Seeing Lu Sheng nod, Qian Duo directly turned and walked out of the office. "What are you doing?" Sun Hao pulled him back and looked at him with a puzzled face. "Compared to dealing with Lady, I'd rather go back to jail." Qian Duo sneered, looked at Lu, and said, "Have you seen Lady? Have you fought with him?" "No," said Qian Duo's words. Qian Duo S's. Qian Duo said word by word. This definitely isn't as simple as looking at the data and information. Lady's terror might be even greater than Song Bang's. If it was in the wild, there might be some possibility. But in the city, that's his home ground. Everywhere can replenish his energy. There's no way to trap him. Before he creates even more chaos, let Zhurong or the Flying General come back. That's the only way. Lu Sheng shook his head. I can't control them, and they definitely won't come back. The situation on the northern front isn't much better than Tianjing's, and we have no other choice. Sun Hao asked. Then is there a way to restrain him? The experts at the Academy of Sciences are already doing their best to research Lady's abilities, but you should know that this kind of thing can be cracked a long time ago. Our base has set up a team of experts to track and study every single level 5 ability user of the Fire Dragon Vanguard. Lu Sheng sighed. But the only thing we can be sure of now is that it's no different from the past 10 years. To deal with Lei Di, we have to lure him to a place that lacks electricity and is far away from the city. The electrical resistance in the air is too high. Even if he's a level 5 ability user, according to our calculations, he can't move more than 100 meters in the air every time he transforms into a bolt of lightning. And this consumes a lot of energy, so he definitely can't use it too much. Although it's still very difficult to deal with. But at least it's better than being in the city, where he can drill into the electrical circuits as he pleases. Sun Hao nodded, then count me in. After saying that, he looked at the Qian Duo again. The Qian Duo snorted and said unhappily, "Then do you have a way to lure him out of the city? The bait is ready. The only problem now is whether or not we can eat it." Lu Sheng said seriously, "I don't expect to kill him, but at least we have to seriously injure him. Otherwise, the whole of Xia will be in danger. Now that Song Bang is missing, everyone is looking over here. Baiwei, Flan, Yinxi in the south, Dongyang in the east, the Ice Fortress in the north. Even within the country, the One Breath Society, the Renaissance Society, and those other local organizations are all eyeing it covetously. Once they think that Xia Dragonfinch's power is no longer enough to suppress them, then the situation will be very bad, you should know." "Okay, I know what you're saying." The Qian Duo looked at the expectant Sun Hao and said helplessly, "Count me in." After Lianping flew to the city, he was too lazy to communicate with others. He took a few clothes to change, then found a map and scanned it with his eyes. With his amazing memory, he memorized the whole map and then flew directly to Tianjing. At the same time, he looked at the time and found that he had slept for more than 10 days, and he was a little worried about Li Qian's situation. After all, her ability was very useful. Along the way, he flew and stopped, and from time to time, he had to confirm his position. Fortunately, he was fast enough, and he was flying, and his memory was good enough, so the whole map was in his mind. Therefore, although he got lost a few times, he had to land on the ground to confirm his position according to the road signs. He arrived in Tianjing before the sky turned dark. After arriving in Tianjing, he first went to Sun Hao's house and found that the whole house had been empty, and even the doors and windows were sealed. Lianping looked around, then walked to a pancake stall and asked for 2 pancakes. "Boss, do you know why the room in the opposite building was sealed?" "Oh, the second floor of the opposite building? I heard that it was to catch a murderer, and a lot of people came that day. Let me tell you, the police, the army, and the fire department were all there. The area within 500 meters was sealed, and I heard that the murderer was hiding in there, and he even took hostages. In the end, the army was mobilized, and the gunshots could be heard from a few hundred meters away." Lianping frowned and took a bite of the pancake. The boss's words seemed to be very vivid, but the more he spoke, the more ridiculous it became. However, one thing was for sure, and that was that Li Qian and the others were indeed taken away, but there were no signs of explosions around the house, nor were there any signs of damage like craters. It seemed that there was no conflict between the two parties. Maybe it was because of the Qian Duo and Sun Hao's identity, or maybe it was because Song Bang was not there. However, since the house was still sealed, it was very likely that they were still in the hands of the Xia Dragonfinch. It was not a problem for Li Anping to barge in directly, but he was afraid that the other party would use Li Qian to threaten him. What he wanted to do was to secretly rescue Li Qian before the other party knew of his whereabouts. Just as Lianping was eating his pancake and thinking, a man in a black suit and sunglasses walked in front of him. "Hello, may I ask if you're Mr. Lianping?" A moment ago, it was still calm and tranquil, but in the next moment, an astonishing killing intent suddenly appeared. The man in sunglasses felt as if he was being pricked by needles at the back of his head. He felt as if he was standing at the entrance of hell and was gently brushed by the Grim Reaper's clothes. The murderous aura immediately retreated and disappeared without a trace. The man touched his palms, and they were all sweaty. What a terrifying aura. The man's sense of superiority and his condescending attitude as a member of the secret department had all disappeared. He clearly understood that at this moment, his life was no longer in his hands. Tell me your identity, purpose, and how you found out about me. I'm Antero from the Secret Service. Antero wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. The Secret Service is an agency directly under His Majesty the Emperor. In terms of authority within the government, we are above the Xia Dragonfinch. However, our specialty is not combat power, but intelligence. Seeing that Lianping did not say a word, Antero could only continue. Ever since you disappeared with Song Bang, I've been sent here to keep an eye on you. As long as you discover your whereabouts, I'll report it immediately. The same places are Xia Liekong's house, Song Bang's house, the training room you used before, and all the places we think you might appear. Oh, you guys know quite a lot? Lianping glanced at Antero. The other party's physical fitness was excellent, but unfortunately, he was not an ability user. Therefore, Lianping was not worried that the other party would play any tricks. He then asked, "Then why are you looking for me?" "Because His Majesty wants to talk to you." Antero gulped and handed the phone to Lianping. It showed that he was in the middle of a call. When he heard the words His Majesty, Lianping could not help but raise his eyebrows. The Xia's current emperor was naturally only one person. It was the emperor who lived in the imperial city and ruled the entire Xia. "Hello, Lianping. I'm Wang Chong. I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time." That night, a car sent Lianping to the imperial city. It was not until an hour later that he was sent out. Other than the two of them, no one else knew what he and Wang Chong had talked about during this period of time. Chapter 120. 10 o'clock in the evening, on the road outside Tianjin. A fleet of cars was moving forward, and in the middle of the fleet was a white ambulance. However, there was no sign of a hospital, nor were there any red and blue lights. The unconscious Xia Liekong was lying on the bed in the ambulance. Lu Sheng sat in the front passenger seat. Other than a doctor and nurse, Qian Duo and Sun Hao were also in the back of the car. Ever since Xia Liekong met Lianping, he had been in a coma and had never woken up. Although his physical body was still alive, no one knew how long it would take for him to regain consciousness. The Xia Dragonfinch's internal experts had examined Xia Liekong many times, but they had not been able to come up with any useful conclusions. Qian Duo sat in the chair, his right leg trembling. He looked to the left and right of the car from time to time. He looked a little nervous. Sun Hao, on the other hand, closed his eyes and leaned against the back of the seat, resting. No one spoke in the car, and the atmosphere was very heavy. It was as if there was an invisible pressure spreading in the air. At that moment, Sun Hao's eyes suddenly opened, and there seemed to be a flash of lightning in his eyes. "It's coming." Everyone's attention was raised to the highest level in an instant. At the same time, a flash of lightning fell from the sky. The lightning hit the first car in the fleet, and all the drivers at the back stepped on the brakes subconsciously. At the same time, they turned the steering wheel with both hands, trying to go around the car. The car that was surrounded by lightning suddenly exploded, and the whole car turned into a huge fireball. "Ignore him. Go." Under the command of Lu Sheng, the rest of the fleet rushed into the fire and brushed past the exploding car. Just behind them, a tall blonde man silently watched the fleet of cars go away. Then, his whole body emitted electric light. He took a step forward and chased after them at an amazing speed. At the back of the fleet, a person came out of the passenger seat of a car, holding a machine gun and shooting at the blonde man. The bullets splashed on the man's body, making a sound of metal colliding, and all of them were sent flying. Don't use guns. Normal weapons can't even break through his psyche chi. But at the next moment, the running blonde man stretched out his hand and aimed at the convoy. There was a flash of electricity in his palm, and something seemed to shoot out like a meteor streaking across the sky. The trunk of a car was torn apart without any warning, followed by a big hole in the driver's stomach. Then the engine in front of the car made a loud noise, and the whole car rolled out of the guardrail. Then the second car, the third car. From a moment the blonde man reached out to the 3 cars that were pierced by an unknown attack. Everything happened in less than a second. Chien Duo shouted into the walkie-talkie. It's an electromagnetic cannon. Don't stand in a row if you don't want to die. The remaining ambulances and 3 cars instantly scattered. The golden-haired man sneered. He raised his right hand and slashed at the car at the back. A bolt of lightning shot out from his finger, and with the support of his psyche chi, it turned into a straight sword of lightning, slashing down from the middle of the car. In an instant, the whole car was split into 2 from left to right. The broken parts of the car brushed past the golden-haired man's body and flew backward, eventually turning into flaming wreckage. Then, he stretched out both of his palms towards the remaining 2 cars. Under the illumination of the electricity, he opened his 5 fingers slightly, and the next moment, he put his palms together. Under the pull of the electromagnetic force, the 2 cars crashed into each other with a boom. Jump! Lu Xing shouted as he kicked open the door of the ambulance. Sun Hao and Chien Duo were not much slower. One of them carried Xia Laikong, while the other carried the doctors and nurses and jumped out of the ambulance. Almost in the next second, the 2 cars pulled by the electromagnetic force soared into the sky, bringing a gust of wind with them as they fell from the sky, crashing into the ambulances in front of them. With a loud boom, the 3 cars crashed into each other violently. The golden-haired man clenched his fists, and the 3 cars seemed to be pinched by an invisible hand. After a series of ear-piercing sounds of metal being pulled apart, they had turned into a huge pile of steel garbage. The golden-haired man waved his hand, and a huge pile of wreckage rushed towards the people who had jumped out of the ambulance at an alarming speed. Chien Duo threw the nurses and doctors aside and turned to look at the wreckage that was rushing towards them. He roared and pushed his hands in the air. His psyche power surged towards the wreckage like a tide. With a bang, the wreckage was pulled apart by the electromagnetic force and psyche power, turning into countless fragments that shot in all directions. There were so many fragments that before they could react, they had already pierced through Chien Duo's and Lu Sheng's bodies. Sun Hao's back was also badly mutilated in order to block the attack for Xia Laikong, who was in his arms. Looking at the 3 people kneeling on the ground, and Xia Laikong lying on the ground, the golden-haired man slowly walked over. Hello, you 3. You can call me Lightning Emperor. Then, Lady walked up to Xia Laikong, turned his head, and carefully observed his appearance. Farewell. But in the next moment, Xia Laikong's face twisted and changed into Zhurong's face. You've been tricked. What? At this moment, Lady's heart skipped a beat. He knew Zhurong's ability too well, so he chose to put safety first and turned his body into an electronic state in an instant. This was also the transformation of his body after he reached level 5. He could turn his body into countless electrons, as if he was a creature completely made of electricity. Most ordinary attacks would be ineffective against him. In the electronic state, he could move through the air like lightning, moving at an average speed of 100,000 kilometers per second. Unfortunately, the electric current in the atmosphere moved and the resistance was too high. Even he could only move no more than 100 meters, which was equivalent to teleporting a distance of 100 meters. With a flash of lightning, Lady appeared 100 meters away from Zhurong. But in the next moment, when he felt the psychic power of Zhurong, he shouted angrily, "Level 4 ability user, you're not Zhurong." Zhurong laughed, and his face changed into Lu Feng's appearance. I told you, you've been tricked. Chien Duo waved his hands, and Sun Hao, who was beside him, rushed into the sky with the help of telekinesis toward Lei Di, who was 100 meters away. Facing the aggressive Sun Hao, Lei Di only pointed at him. In the next moment, the powerful electric current at his fingertip formed a blue light gun, which shot towards Sun Hao at an absolute speed of over 200,000 kilometers per second. Facing such a fast attack, Sun Hao couldn't dodge at all, but he didn't need to. The electric gun hit Sun Hao's body, but he didn't react at all. There wasn't even a trace of burn on his body. This was because Sun Hao, who could control the electric current in his body, wasn't afraid of pure electric damage. Hmm. Lei Di frowned, and Sun Hao had already rushed in front of him. Facing Sun Hao, who was close at hand, Lei Di subconsciously threw out a punch. Before he could figure out his opponent's ability, he had to rely on his psychic power to crush his opponent in terms of level and blast him into smithereens. However, this punch was only halfway through when Lei Di's vision turned black. He couldn't see anything, and there was only darkness in his eyes. In the distance, Lu Sheng stared at Lei Di. Using his ability to deprive a level 5 ability user of their vision, even if it was only for a few seconds, was already an unimaginable burden on him. His head buzzed, and blood flowed out of his nose. His ability could deprive people of their vision, but the stronger the opponent's spirit and will, the weaker the effect of his ability. Meanwhile, for a level 5 ability user, whether it was spirit or will, they had clearly reached the peak of humanity. However, during these few seconds, Sun Hao didn't let him down at all. Electricity surged all over his body. Apart from his own electricity, there was also electricity from Lei Di's attack just now. His body speed reached its limit under the stimulation of electricity. His hands left behind afterimages, and he had already punched towards Lei Di, who had lost his vision. Shoulders, chest, stomach, knees, crotch, neck. In just a few seconds, Lei Di's vital points all over his body were attacked by hundreds of punches. However, even though he was hit by hundreds of punches, under the protection of his psychic power, Sun Hao's fists only made Lei Di feel a bit of pain at most. By the time he regained his vision, Sun Hao had already left behind a series of afterimages as he flew backwards. Lu Sheng's vision went black, and he couldn't help but half kneel on the ground. Although he didn't faint, the pain in his head was like thousands of needles, and he couldn't use his ability for a short period of time. Almost at the same time as Sun Hao flew backwards in a car 2 kilometers away, Hong Fangzheng pulled the trigger. The Gauss sniper rifle in his hand shook slightly, and the electromagnetic bullet, pushed by the magnetic field, instantly crossed the distance of 2 kilometers and arrived in front of Lei Di's forehead. However, it was only in front of his forehead. The bullet was still spinning desperately, but no matter how hard he tried, there was an insurmountable barrier in front of Lei Di, and he couldn't get past it. This was Lei Di's electromagnetic shield, and no metal object could get close to him without his permission. In the enemy's rear area of Tianjing Xia, he had his electromagnetic shield open almost 24 hours a day. How is that possible? Hong Fangzheng looked at Lei Di in disbelief. He didn't expect this bullet to kill Lei Di, but it could at least injure him. He clearly knew that the bullet, after being enhanced by his ability, was more than 3 times the original electromagnetic bullet, whether it was power or speed. But even so, it still couldn't hurt Lei Di. Looking at the bullet spinning in front of his forehead, Lei Di reached out a hand and slowly grabbed it in the palm of his hand. He looked at the bullet, then looked at the 4 people in front of him, as if all the attacks just now were child's play. His eyes swept across Sun Hao and the other 3 in front of him, then looked 2 kilometers away in the direction of the bullet. Do you guys understand the situation? Who is in front of you? Chapter 121. Level 5 Ability User, Lei Di. Of course we know, Lu Sheng said as he clutched his chest. Before he finished speaking, all sorts of sounds could be heard. The sound of cars, human footsteps, and the sound of aircraft propellers. Hundreds of armored vehicles, tanks, assault helicopters, as well as countless soldiers armed with live ammunition, surrounded Grozny and the others from all directions. There were also several tens of ability users from the Great Xia Dragonfinch, led by Yang Guang, who had half of his body turned into a diamond. All of them were glaring at the Thunder Monarch. Lu Sheng's plan was to lure Lei Di out by diverting the news of the fake Xia icon. It was simple but effective, because even if Lei Di suspected that this was a trap, facing a level 5 ability user who couldn't resist, this kind of temptation was enough to make him take the risk. Lu Sheng looked at Lei Di nervously and suddenly said, Lei Di, I know you're very strong, but in a situation like this, even if you break out of the encirclement, it won't be easy, right? Many of us might die. but will you be able to come out unscathed? Oh, what are you trying to say? Lady looked at the surrounding soldiers and smiled. Lu Sheng swallowed and said, "You can leave today, but you're not allowed to enter Xia for a year. We'll pretend that nothing happened. How about it?" As soon as Lu Sheng finished speaking, Lady couldn't help but laugh. But before he could reply, Sun Hao had already stood up and was about to refute. "How can we do that? If we let him go today, it'll be difficult to lure him out of the city next time." But just as he was about to speak, Qian Duo pressed on his shoulder and shook his head at him. How can Lu Sheng really make such a stupid request? He's just trying to stall for time. On the other side, Yang Wang's subordinates were about to speak, but they were all stopped by him with a wave of his hand. "You want to stall for time? I'll help you." Yang Wang also opened his mouth and said, "Have you done enough in Tianjin? Song generals may come back at any time. Don't leave when the time comes." After a moment of silence, Lady looked at the Xia Dragonfinch's ability users with disdain and slowly said, "If Song Bang was really still alive, then the one standing in front of me right now wouldn't be you small fries. If you want me to leave, sure." Lady looked at everyone with a proud expression. "Wait until I kill all of you." There was no negotiation, no compromise. When facing these level 4 ability users and ordinary soldiers, Lady didn't have the slightest intention of backing down. The lineup that Xia had sent out was indeed very strong, but that was only for normal people. For level 5 ability users, 99% of the people in front of him wouldn't be able to break through the protection of his psychic energy. Meanwhile, Lady could now completely confirm the authenticity of Song Bang's disappearance and Xiao Yekong's coma. He wasn't being arrogant or conceited. Without the restrictions of ability users at the same level, the current Tianjin was like a playground for him. All he needed to do was to stomp over and crush the other party into pieces. Attack! Yang Guang transformed into the Diamond Giant and was the first to rush up. Then, Lu Sheng and the others activated their long-range superpowers. Then, the main cannons of the tanks, the rocket launchers on the armed helicopters, and countless soldiers pulled the triggers and fired their bullets. Further away, snipers like Hong Fangjing also launched their attacks at almost the same time. If the entire scene was still, one could see that everyone was looking at Lei Di with ferocious expressions. Bullets were flying, psychic energy was burning, and endless killing intent enveloped Lei Di. There seemed to be something moving in the air. In the next moment, endless electric light shot out from Lei Di's body. The power of the magnetic field spread out several times, covering a radius of several thousand meters. Bullets and artillery shells were sent flying back. Rockets exploded in the air. The armored vehicles and tanks all stopped firing. The armed helicopters in the air emitted a series of electric sparks and fell diagonally to the ground. In an instant, all the electronic equipment in the surroundings was paralyzed. Bullets and artillery shells were sent flying back to the soldiers. The only ones who weren't affected were the ability users. Magnetic field, electromagnetic pulse. Thinking of this, the Qinduoduo's eyes were filled with despair. This was Lei Di's strength. Modern weapons were useless against him. Most conventional weapons weren't as effective as his fists in front of him. But even if all the weapons and equipment were paralyzed in an instant, there were still 2 figures who rushed toward Lei Di without hesitation. Yang Guang's body was petrified. Wherever he went, it was as if mountains were collapsing. With his indestructible diamond body, he was never afraid of any attacks. So even if he was facing a level 5 ability user, he still dared to rush up and attack. With a boom, Yang Guang's fist smashed toward the Thunder Monarch. His hand, which was made of diamond, glowed brightly under the electric light, reflecting a resplendent glow. Facing this punch, Lei Di only reached out his hand and gently grasped his opponent's fist. Yang Guang's strength was great. Even if Lei Di grasped his opponent's fist, he was still pushed back a few steps. Physical strength wasn't his forte. But in the next moment, he looked at Yang Guang's body as if he was looking at a dead man. Do you know how high the temperature of lightning is? 30,000 degrees Celsius, 3 times the temperature of the sun's surface, came from Lei Di's hand. Although it was only for a moment, Yang Guang still cried out in pain. His whole body frantically retreated, and the diamond in his right hand was completely vaporized into carbon dioxide. Under his frightened gaze, Lady smiled coldly and pointed at him again. A blue beam of light shot out from Lady's fingertip and instantly penetrated his thigh, vaporizing his entire thigh into carbon dioxide. Not only that, the beam of light shot out for more than 50 meters. Everywhere it passed, all kinds of ability users, soldiers, and vehicles were turned into ashes. Yang Guang fell to the ground. Waves of pain came from his body, but what made him even more terrified was Lei Di's strength. He didn't kill me in one go. He was playing. From the beginning to the end, he was just playing. He didn't care about us at all. Without the support of ability users of the same level, we're just small fries in his eyes. Regret and fear intertwined, and Yang Guang no longer had the slightest bit of will to fight. Everything happened too quickly. After Yang Guang was killed with a single attack, Sun Hao hesitated for a moment and stopped in his tracks. When the Qian Duo saw him, he bellowed in his heart, "Idiot, come back quickly. Do you want to die too?" However, under everyone's astonished gazes, Sun Hao only stopped for a moment before he charged out once again. Is he crazy? What is he trying to do? He'll die if he continues like this. Just as everyone was thinking this, Sun Hao had already left behind a series of afterimages and landed a punch on Lei Di's face. After being hit in the face, Lei Di didn't seem to be affected at all. His neck only tilted back slightly due to the force of the punch. An ability user who can control electricity, huh? He thought as he looked at Sun Hao. At the same time, he punched out towards Sun Hao with electricity. Since he had a stronger ability to control electricity than Sun Hao, how could he possibly lose to Sun Hao in terms of speed? The fierce punch came whistling through the air, and the air was smashed open by an invisible force. The fist landed on Sun Hao's arm. However, this was only the first punch. After the first punch, Sun Hao was met with a fierce and violent attack. Boom, 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 boom. Under the illumination of the electricity, Sun Hao's body flew back. The two of them exchanged punches and kicks like a series of afterimages. Each punch caused an explosion in the air. Sun Hao could only feel that each of his opponent's punches was a combination of hardness and gentleness, and they were also like thunderbolts. With each punch and kick, he could feel the pain in his hands penetrating into his bones. He continuously retreated more than 20 steps, but he was completely unable to escape from his opponent's stormy attacks. The absolute difference in strength was like a natural chasm between the two of them. Suddenly, Sun Hao felt the pressure on him lighten. He saw Lei Di's eyes in a daze. His punches and kicks suddenly stopped, and he seized the opportunity to rush out. In the distance, Lu Sheng spat out another mouthful of blood. He had already been helped out by the people around him. On the other side, a few of Xia Dragonfinch's ability users had already taken the opportunity to carry the heavily injured Yang Guang out. When Lei Di's eyes fell into darkness again, Hong Fangzheng, who was 2,000 meters away, pulled the trigger of his Gaussian sniper rifle again. This time, the bullet emitted an endless amount of light as it flew through the air. An explosive energy spread through the bullet, giving everyone present a feeling of extreme danger. However, this feeling lasted for less than 1/100th of a second. This was because Lei Di had already easily grasped him in his hands. He didn't even switch positions after 2 snipes. Lei Di looked coldly in Hong Fangzheng's direction. Although he couldn't see his opponent's appearance clearly, he still threw the bullet in the direction for which it had come. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Under the acceleration of the magnetic field, the bullet was like a super electromagnetic gun. It charged toward Hong Fangzheng at a speed of 4,000 meters per second. Hong Fangzheng, who had used up all his psychic energy and injected all his energy into the bullet, couldn't react at all. Even if he were in his peak condition, this speed wasn't something he could react to. The car was hit in the blink of an eye. A huge fireball soared into the sky. The kinetic energy carried by the bullet itself, in addition to the energy injected by Hong Fangzheng, exploded at the same time, turning the area within 50 meters of the car into a sea of fire. Looking at the rising flames in the distance, Lu Sheng let out a furious roar and was about to charge toward Lei. However, he was held back by the people around him, not allowing him to charge forward. Retreat! Retreat! The operation has failed. Hurry up and leave. He's catching up. Lei looked at the people who were fleeing in all directions and laughed out loud. Amidst his maniacal laughter, countless thunderbolts descended from the sky and smashed onto the people's heads, leaving charred corpses on the ground. Then, he rushed towards a crowd that was scattering. In the darkness, a figure with electric light dashed left and right. Only the tremors, gunshots, screams, and occasional flashes of fire could show where the massacre was taking place. In less than a minute, hundreds of people had died. At this moment, there was no difference before Lei, be it ability users or ordinary people. If they charged over, they would be struck by lightning and die. If they saw people, they would be shot by electromagnetic guns and die. Wherever his thoughts went, a bolt of lightning would strike. No one could stop Lei for even a moment. Despair and fear spread through the crowd in an instant. Punches and kicks could not penetrate Lei's psychic energy, and all modern weapons were completely destroyed by the electromagnetic pulse. Lei's speed was even faster than Sun Hao's. Most people could not even see his figure clearly before they became charred corpses on the ground. At this time, everyone's hearts were shrouded in fear. Country, government, and glory were all cast aside. Get away from this monster as far as possible. This was the only thought in their minds at the moment. However, at this time, a figure went against the flow of people and charged toward Lei at an incredible speed. Chapter 122. Against the flow of the crowd, a figure charged toward Lei at an unbelievable speed. When Qian Duoduo saw Sun Hao charging at the Thunder Monarch without any hesitation, he sighed. In the end, he activated all of his mental powers and sent them surging toward the Thunder Monarch. My old friend, this is probably the last time I'll be accompanying you. Lei watched in disdain as Sun Hao charged toward him. He laughed coldly and said, "Do you really think that I can't kill you?" However, just as he was about to throw a punch, he realized that his entire body had been bound by an invisible force. This force was so strong that he was unable to move at all. At this moment, Sun Hao had already punched his chest, then his neck, and then his cheeks. His fist rained down on Sun Hao like a violent storm. At this moment, Sun Hao's heart was filled with anxiety. "Thank you, my good brother. At least let me buy some time. 1 minute is fine, 2 minutes is fine too." Sun Hao landed a punch on Lei's chin, creating a loud sound. Although his body was unharmed, Lei was still sent flying into the air by the force of this force. Then, a series of air-piercing sounds rang out in the sky. More than 10 small dots could be seen growing larger under the clouds. Sun Hao, Qian Duoduo, Lu Sheng, Yang Guang, and the others could not help but look toward the direction of the air-piercing sounds. "They're here! They're finally here!" It had only been a few minutes since the start of the battle. In order to delay for these few minutes, the Xia Dragonfinch had already suffered heavy casualties. In Sun Hao's vision, the black dots gradually grew larger. 12 fighter jets swept across the night sky and were flying toward him. However, the hope in his eyes turned into fury in the next moment. A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky and struck Qian Duoduo. The latter's body was charred black and fell to the ground. Sun Hao roared as he turned around. However, Lei punched him in the face and sent him flying. At this moment, the 12 fighter jets swooped down toward Lei. Sun Hao was sent flying with a punch and fell to the ground. In the next moment, a blue beam of light brushed past his ear. The high temperature of tens of thousands of degrees had turned his entire left hand into ashes. He let out a blood-curdling scream and endured the intense pain as he charged toward the Thunder Monarch. However, having suddenly lost an arm, he was unable to control his body's balance. After stumbling a few steps, he once again fell to the ground. I'll kill you. 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 I'm going to kill you." The Thunder Emperor got up fell down, and got up again. After a few steps, he fell down again. As the Thunder Emperor looked at Sun Hao, his lips curled in disdain. If shouting was enough, why would we be needed? He took out a metal ball from his tactical pocket and slowly aimed it at Sun Hao's head. Go to hell. The electromagnetic cannon shot out, but it was slightly off target by a few centimeters. It brushed past Sun Hao's head. Lady felt that his hand had been pushed by a force, causing the shot to miss. Lady looked at the Qian Duoduo's body in the distance. The latter's raised hand loosened slightly. It had lost its last bit of strength. At this moment, the 12 fighter jets in the sky flashed with flames. A total of 48 missiles were fired at Lady on the ground at the same time. Of the 48 missiles, only 12 were conventional explosives. The rest were all fuel-air bombs and thermobaric bombs. If all 48 missiles hit Lady and exploded, even he would not be able to survive. Desia's higher-ups did not have the time to consider the geological and environmental changes caused by these missiles, as well as the impact of the explosion being too close to Tianjin. Desia Dragonfinch had paid a huge price just to delay Lady to a certain location. Lady looked at the 48 missiles fired at him and laughed. He raised his right hand and gestured for them to stop. The next moment, the 48 missiles stopped at the same time. They stopped firing at the same time. Then, under the control of the magnetic field, they slowly changed directions. What do you guys think if these missiles are fired at Tianjin? Someone shouted, just detonate them. Hurry up and detonate them. But there was no response. Lady had already taken control of the missiles. Under everyone's desperate gaze, the propulsion system of the missiles emitted flames again. All of them were fired in the direction of Tianjin. How is this possible? He can already control electronic equipment. This is no longer just a simple magnetic field. Whether it was Lu Sheng and Yang Guang, who had already escaped far away, or Sun Hao, who was close at hand, they all watched in disbelief as the missiles flew towards Tianjin. Their initial hope of seriously injuring or even killing Lady had now turned into a deadly killer. He can already control the electric current accurately to control electronic equipment. Lu Sheng was in a daze. When did his ability reach this level? He's just been playing around from the beginning. Yang Guang stared blankly at the missiles in the sky as they flew over his head. He sighed and said, from the beginning, he could have killed all of us in an instant. But this is just a game to him. It's like a cat licking its prey. Complete despair had already shrouded everyone's hearts. They no longer had any way to stop Lady. Now, it seemed that Lady's strength was much stronger than what was previously reported. Even if Song Bang returned now, he would probably be no match for Lady, let alone them. After this battle, the entire government of Desia would probably be standing naked in front of Lady. They would no longer have the power to resist. Most of them fell to the ground as if they had lost their souls. At this moment, their futures were already dark, struggling at death's door. Lady snorted coldly. He glanced at the people around him, then looked at the missiles that had flown far away. He opened his mouth and laughed. This ability to control electronic equipment was something that he had only recently acquired. Although it did not have much destructive power against aptitude users of the same level, it was simply invincible against modern armies. This was also the reason why the Fire Dragon Vanguard had sent him alone to Tianjin. Even an aptitude user stronger than him would not be able to cause as much damage to modern cities as he did. However, Lady's smile only lasted for a moment before it froze. In the distant night sky, a figure soared into the sky and crashed into the missiles at lightning speed. No, he did not actually crash into the missiles. He flew into the sky and stepped on one of the missiles. If the camera zoomed in, it could be seen that a man in a black combat suit was stepping on one of the missiles. The long sword in his hand gently slashed across the missile. Then, the man jumped up and jumped onto another missile. The whole process was extremely fast. From Lady's point of view, he could only see the black figure passing by the missile cluster at an extremely fast speed. Then, a total of 48 missiles exploded behind him at the same time. The distance was already beyond the range that he could control. The bright red flames dyed half of the sky red, but Lady's eyes were fixed on the black figure in the sky. After the black figure destroyed the missile cluster, he immediately rushed over. Although the distance was too far for Lady to see the other person's face clearly, he could still feel that the other person was staring at him. An inexplicable fear came from Lady's chest. He could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. The other person's gaze gave him an ominous feeling. It was just a gaze that could not be seen but could only be sensed, but Lady actually felt fear that he had not felt in a long time. How many years had it been since he last felt fear? By the time he thought of this, 2 seconds had passed. The figure had already crossed a distance of more than 1,000 meters and was rushing towards Lady. His speed was simply unbelievably fast. He did not give Lady any time to react. In the next few seconds, the figure had crossed 1,000 meters and was only a few hundred meters away from Lady. Almost subconsciously, Lady completed his electronic transformation and teleported to a distance of 100 meters behind him. 1 second after he teleported, there was a loud boom. It was as if a meteorite had smashed into the ground. The entire ground continued to shatter, and countless cracks spread out in all directions. The place where Lady had been standing a moment ago had turned into a crater. Lianping was holding the high-frequency knife in one hand, which was flashing with a demonic red glow. He stood quietly in the middle of the crater, looking at Lady. "Don't you feel pain?" "What?" Lady seemed to have felt something. He suddenly looked at his right hand, but the place where his right hand had been was now empty. There was no longer a right hand. Blood spurted out from the wound on his severed arm, dyeing the ground under Lady's feet red. The entire place was silent. Chapter 123. Back to a few minutes ago. At that time, Lianping was lying on a patch of grass, looking up at the sky and thinking. This afternoon, Lianping entered the imperial city and talked to Wang Chong. Wang Chong hoped that he could help the Xia Dragonfinch fight against Lady and promised him countless benefits. However, Lianping did not agree. Instead, he made a special request. This request was immediately rejected by Wang Chong. Then, the two of them parted on bad terms. Lianping was also sent out of the imperial city. After leaving the imperial city, Lianping could feel that someone was following him. However, he did not care about being followed. Any emperor, after understanding his strength and knowing that he was in Tianjing, would probably send someone to keep an eye on him. Not long after Lianping lay down, Antero, who was dressed in black, suddenly appeared behind Lianping. "Mr. Lianping." Lianping glanced at him and said, "Has Wang Chong changed his mind?" "Yes, His Majesty said that he agreed to your request, but he asked you to go and support the Xia Dragonfinch immediately. They have suffered heavy losses." Lianping nodded, stood up, and stretched. "Have you brought the equipment I asked for?" Antero clapped his hands, and several men in black suits came out. They handed the combat uniform and the high-frequency knife to Lianping. Lianping's original combat uniform and the high-frequency knife had been damaged by the lightning. Lianping took off his casual clothes and put on the tight black combat uniform. This black combat uniform was better than the one he wore when he went to the True God sect. After covering his entire body except for the head, all kinds of insulation, bulletproof, anti-impact, air circulation, and filtration systems were turned on, making the inside and outside of his body two different worlds. Teo plugged in a headset to Lianping and said, "Direct satellite communication. As long as you're still in the Eastern continent, you can contact us." Lianping nodded, put the headset into his ear, and asked, "Where is Lady?" Teo pointed to the wristband on Lianping's combat uniform and said, "There is a GPS on it. We have already entered their current location. You can see it when you turn it on." Lianping clicked on the switch on his wrist guard, and a small screen lit up on his arm. On it was a map. The green arrow on the map clearly represented Lianping, and a red dot flashed in the north of the map. A staff member walked to Lianping's side and placed a special alloy scabbard on Lianping's back. Lianping reached behind him and pulled out the high-frequency knife. The blade emitted a bewitching red light, and a wave of heat spread out. The vibration frequency of this high-frequency knife was even higher than Li Onping's previous one. Because of the electric current heating and vibration, the temperature was also extremely high. Tello's phone suddenly rang. He hurriedly turned on his phone and answered the call. Hello? Hello? Okay, what? I understand. I will explain to him. Teo kept nodding. Cold sweat kept breaking out on his forehead. After hanging up the phone, he hurriedly said, Mr. Lady, please act quickly. Lady has controlled 48 missiles to shoot at Tianjin City. There's only half a minute left before the missiles hit. Before he could finish speaking, Li Onping had already rushed into the air with a bang. Then he paused, and there was a loud noise in the air. A wave of air appeared under Li Onping's feet. His whole body had cut through the atmosphere and flew in the direction of the missiles. Back to the present. Lady looked at Li Onping with a solemn face. His severed arm was lying quietly at Li Onping's feet at the moment. When? Shouldn't I have dodged it? Could it be before I dodged? However, Lady had no time to think about these questions. Whether it was the hair on his body, the cold sweat on his forehead, or the slightly trembling skin, everything told Lady. The other party is a monster beyond imagination. The surrounding soldiers and aptitude users all had their eyes on Li Onping. Their faces were filled with disbelief. When Song Bang wanted to catch Li Onping, they all saw Li Onping's photo. It's Li Onping? He cut off Lady's arm? How is that possible? He's only at the second level. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, the truth was right before their eyes. Especially when Yang Guang saw Li Onping. His expression changed abruptly. No one knew what he was thinking. He's here? Then Song Bang really lost? In another direction, Lu Sheng stared at Li Onping and said, He won. He really won? A level 2 ability user defeated a level 5 ability user? Li Onping did not care about their gazes. He only threw a glance at Lei Di and then walked to Qian Duoduo's side. He squatted down and touched Qian Duoduo's body, then said to Sun Hao, He's not dead yet. However, if he isn't treated quickly, his life will still be in danger. Send him away first. At this moment, Sun Hao just got up from the ground. When he heard this, he immediately stumbled over and asked, Really? Li Onping nodded. He looked at Sun Hao's broken arm and the injuries all over his body, then said to a few people in the distance, You guys send them to the hospital. The few ability users were stunned. They looked at each other and wanted to say something. However, whether it was the surrounding silence or Li Onping's terrifying strength, they could not say anything. After hesitating for a few seconds, they walked toward Qian Duoduo. Seeing this, Li Onping turned around and walked toward Lei Di. Sun Hao suddenly grabbed his shoulder and said softly, Be careful. Li Onping did not say anything. He only nodded. From the beginning to the end, Lei Di stood in the same place without moving. Even when Li Onping's back was facing him and he was checking on the Qian Duoduo's injuries, he did not move at all. This was because ever since Li Onping appeared, there had been a huge pressure on him. It had nothing to do with psychic energy or ability. It was the purest intuition in Lei Di's mind. He felt that if he made the slightest movement, he would be attacked like Fong Lei. His opponent's speed was too fast. Lei Di knew that to deal with an ability user with extreme speed, he had to be 100% focused at all times. If he was careless, he would be killed. Everyone, stay away. Seeing that everyone around him quickly left under Li Onping's order, Lei Di still did not move. He stared at Li Onping closely. It was not until everyone left their field of vision that Li Onping spoke again. Aren't you going to run? Li Onping pointed his high-frequency knife at his opponent and said. Lei Di's expression changed. He looked at Li Onping coldly and said, Brat, don't think that you can be proud just because you've successfully ambushed me once. If we really fight, it's not certain who will win. If you wanted to escape in the city, you could have just electronized yourself and crawled into the wires. I wouldn't have been able to do anything to you, Li Onping said calmly. But here, you don't even have the right to escape. After Li Onping said this, Lei Di only felt a slight chill on his neck. Then his vision swayed. It was as if the whole world had turned upside down. His head had been chopped off by Li Onping's knife and flew into the sky. Boom! Lady instantly turned into a ball of lightning, traversing a distance of over 100 meters before appearing once again. Once again, the human body was formed from lightning. The wounds on his neck and arms had all disappeared, other than Lady's pale countenance. He looked as if he had never been injured before. His chest kept on heaving up and down as he looked at Li Onping in astonishment. He had also exchanged blows with Song Bang before. However, right now, Li Onping was many times faster than Song Bang. In any case, Lady did not know how fast Li Onping was. The feeling that Li Onping gave him was that he was so fast that he could not be seen. It was as if Li Onping had surpassed all sounds and sights. How many more times can you perform such teleportation? Li Onping's voice rang out from behind Lady. It was like a gust of cold air blowing against his heart. Lady bellowed loudly, "Have a taste of this move." This was Lady's strongest attack, Limitless Thunder Prison. At the instant Lady spoke, the high-frequency knife in Li Onping's hand turned into several hundred afterimages. Lady's body was instantly slashed by countless knife light. However, Lady, who had been slashed into countless pieces, did not die. Instead, he turned into endless thunderbolts and gathered into a ball. After knowing that Li Onping's speed and reflexes were completely above his, Lady decisively chose to activate all the thunderbolts in his body to carry out a large-scale attack. It was because he understood that no matter how fast his super electromagnetic cannon, electric attacks, and teleportation were, it would be useless against this monster. It was because he could not react in time to his opponent's movements. If this were to continue, he would only be exhausted to death. In Lady's body, over 3 billion volts of voltage and over 100,000 amperes of electric current ran amok at the same time. The temperature of the ball of electricity that he had turned into instantly reached 35,000 degrees Celsius, far surpassing the temperature of the sun's surface. The ground melted and cracked in an instant. The air was heated up by such a high temperature and expanded violently, forming a shock wave. Then, the limitless thunder prison exploded with energy comparable to a small nuclear bomb. The huge light even scattered all over Tianjin. However, under Lady's control, his destructive power was completely concentrated within a radius of 1,000 meters. The clouds were blown away, and a huge crater that was tens of meters deep was blasted into the ground. Lu Sheng and the others, who had already escaped far away, were blown tens of meters away by the shock wave. All of them turned their heads and looked behind them with dumbfounded expressions. A huge pillar of light formed by thunderbolts pierced through the clouds. A few minutes later, the pillar of light and the smoke and dust slowly dissipated. Lady was lying on the ground next to the crater that was hundreds of meters in diameter and tens of meters deep. His eyes were lifeless, his face was haggard, and his muscles were atrophied. He looked like an old man with one foot in the grave. The explosion just now had used up all of his psychic energy and electricity. At the moment, he felt that he couldn't even lift a finger, let alone electronically. Although I've killed this guy, the Xia Dragonfinch, and the others will definitely come for me, Lady thought. I have to leave this place before they get here. It's best if I can find a place where I can absorb electricity. At the thought of this, Lady used all of his strength to prop himself up. After a few tries, he slowly stood up. He was too weak at the moment. I need to take a rest and recover my strength. Just then, a strange sound came from the depths of the crater. Huh? Lady's face flashed with a hint of surprise and uncertainty. He looked at the bottom of the crater with disbelief. The vaporized ground kept emitting waves of high temperature and steam, making Lady unable to see clearly what was down there. However, as the sound got louder and louder, he gradually saw a figure slowly crawling out from the bottom of the crater. How is this possible? He saw Li Onping walking toward him step by step. His battle uniform and high-frequency knife were long gone, and the places where his two arms had been were also empty. His entire body was covered in wounds, and there were even countless flesh tendrils moving on his face. It was as if they wanted to regenerate, but had no energy left. You monster! Lady looked at Li Onping appearing before him in a daze. Terror gushed out from his heart. Monster! How is it possible for someone to not die after receiving such an attack head-on? To think that you have the ability to regenerate. Looking at Lady's astonished expression, Li Onping slowly exhaled and said, "What an amazing attack. If it wasn't for the fact that I have the ability to regenerate, I would probably have died. It's not just your strength. To be able to make such a prompt decision to use such an attack after understanding the absolute difference in speed between us, your judgment and execution are also very impressive. But now you've still lost. Do you have any last words?" Lady looked at Li Onping in a daze, and the grayness in his eyes grew increasingly heavier. He was too weak, and only deep despair and terror could be seen in his eyes. "Is there nothing else you want to say?" Li Onping raised his right leg and stomped down on Lady's chest. "Then don't worry. You'll become my power, and I'll rule over the entire world, making all humans operate according to my will. I'll create an ideal town." With a cautious sound, Li Onping stomped down on Lady's lungs, crushing them. The expert under his foot twitched a few times and then died completely. Li Onping's body let out a series of stifled sounds, and his hands started to grow back. The skin on his face also started to regenerate and close up. His body continued to advance toward an indescribable and indescribable realm. At the same time, a faint black human figure slowly floated out from behind him. Chapter 124. Inside the Imperial City. Li Onping, who was wearing a black combat uniform, threw Lady's dried-up head onto Wang Chong's desk. "From now on, the Xia Dragonfinch is under my control. Everything related to ability users into Xia is also under my control." Wang Chong looked at him with an ashen face and said, "What if I don't agree? Then I'll kill you. It's useless even if you kill me. The 9 great royal families won't let you go." Wang Chong's face was full of hatred. "If I die, they'll only choose a new emperor, and then you'll be hunted down by the entire Xia. Then I'll kill the new emperor. I'll keep killing here until you compromise." Wang Chong stared fixedly at Li Onping, but the other party's eyes were as cold as an iceberg, showing no signs of weakness. "From now on, you'll have the right to rule the Xia, and I'll rule your lives." Northern Front. Under the Jisla Snow Mountain. In a field of snow, a figure covered in blood was fleeing at top speed. His feet never touched the ground, and he was always 1 meter above the ground. It looked like he was gliding, but his speed was very fast. However, every few hundred meters, he couldn't help but look back with a nervous expression, as if something terrifying was chasing after him. Drops of blood dripped from his body onto the snowy ground, forming a red trail. After a few minutes, he stopped, because there was already someone waiting in front of him. It was a man with hair that looked like burning flames. "Zhurong," the man covered in blood asked. The man called Zhurong said calmly, "Do you need a reason, Flying General? How many years have we fought side by side?" The Flying General said angrily, "You're betraying your own people." "Huh?" Zhurong laughed. "What are you laughing at?" The Flying General roared. "Flying General, why are you and Xia Laikong always so childish?" Zhurong said coldly, "Race, country, society. These things were only formed by a group of mortals in order to fight against the strong. As level 5 ability users, we have the power of God and have already transcended the mortal world. Whether it's a country or a race, they have nothing to do with us. They shouldn't be the shackles that bind us. As a level 5 ability user, you have the power of God, and yet you're still wholeheartedly working for those mortals. You really make me sick. You betrayed me for the Fire Dragon Vanguard. Isn't working for others? You're just a god's name," he said while speaking. He couldn't help but cough. A stream of blood froth of his mouth. Right at this moment, the ground beneath their feet suddenly trembled. A crack appeared in the ground, and a man's voice came from within. "This is different. Zhurong only chose the winner. Flying General, as a level 5 ability user, you have a lifespan several times that of a normal person. There's no need for you to die with the whole of the Xia." The flying general looked at the crack in the ground and said hatefully, "White dwarf star." In midair, an elegant blood shadow descended from the sky, bringing with it a strong gust of wind. That's right, you're already the last level 5 ability user in Xia. Whether you surrender or are killed by us, Xia is doomed. During the time you were on the run, Lady should have already wiped Tianjing off the map. Golden chi ignited on the flying general's body, and his aura surged into the sky. Even the other 3 people present couldn't help but take a few steps back. There's no need to say anymore. If you want to invade my country, then you'll have to step over my body. On that day, a magnitude 8.5 earthquake occurred within 100 miles. The snow on Mount Gisla melted, and mudslides and floods engulfed 6 nearby cities. A total of 40,000 people were killed. At the same time, the level 5 ability user into Xia Dragonfinch, the flying general, disappeared. Another level 5 ability user, Zhurong, announced that he would join the Ice Fortress's Fire Dragon Vanguard. When the news came out, Tianjing was shaken. For a moment, the dark clouds of war shrouded the entire eastern continent, and all the countries fell into a precarious situation. And in the western continent, a disease called cannibalism broke out on a large scale. While the Yemester Federation's imaginary agency dealt with the epidemic, a fierce conflict broke out between the Yemester Federation's Yemester Federation branch. The history of mankind once again moved in an unknown direction. Looking at the ending, there aren't many words left, so I might as well post them all together. From today until the end of next week, this book will have a recommendation spot. This is also thanks to everyone's support, so I want to thank everyone. At the same time, I hope that everyone will continue to support me in the coming week. I'm here to ask for a recommendation ticket and bookmark. Thank you again. Chapter 125. Lady's explosion that day had a huge impact on Tianjing. Almost half of the people in the city heard the earth-shattering explosion and the huge pillar of light that shot into the sky. Countless people took photos and uploaded them to the internet. However, almost immediately, these photos were all removed from the internet. Combined with the destruction that Song Bang and Li Onping had caused in the city, all kinds of guesses, doubts, rumors, and gossip spread like wildfire. There were even some rumors about the existence of superpowers that quickly spread among the people at the bottom of society. Although there were still very few people who believed it, some people were no longer like before, completely denying the existence of superpowers. In addition to the huge earthquake in the north, many ordinary people, as well as high-ranking officials and nobles, quickly and spontaneously evacuated Tianjing. However, most people still chose to stay. The habit formed over many years made them choose to believe in the government. It was hard to say who was right and who was wrong because they didn't have all the information about the current situation. They only made their judgments based on their many years of social experience. Currently, most of the people who were most clear about the situation in Xia were concentrated into Xia Dragonfinch's base. Compared to the bustling base of the past, the Xia Dragonfinch's manpower was probably the lowest in history because of Lady's massacre. Everyone who passed by seemed to be in a hurry and had a worried expression on their faces. It was as if they were worried about the fate of the empire and their own fate. In a huge office on the 15th floor of the basement, Li Onping sat in an office chair. He was wearing a blue and white uniform. In front of his desk, Li Qian was wearing a short skirt uniform and reporting. After Wang Chong handed over the Xia Dragonfinch to Li Onping, Li Qian was assigned as his assistant. There's no news from the 9 royal families for now. Li Qian was holding a thick newspaper and a notebook filled with her words. However, they already know that you defeated Qing Chan, Song Bang, and Lei Di. According to the intelligence, they're currently planning to let you do whatever you want. After all, there's probably no one in Xia who can go up against you. However, there might still be some probing. Yes. Li Onping nodded. How's your ability? Has it reached the first level? Yes. I didn't expect that after being under house arrest for so long and doing nothing but eating and sleeping all day, I've leveled up. Li Qian smiled. Looks like I'll just eat, drink, and have fun every day from now on. Li Yonping smiled. Have you improved in any way? Li Qian thought for a moment and said, if you want to monitor normal people, you only need to know their names and appearance. For ability users, the number of times you need to ask is reduced. Level 1 ability, users need to ask 1 question. Level 2 ability, users need to ask 2 questions. And Level 5 ability, users need to ask 5 questions. Li Yonping nodded with satisfaction and said excitedly, good, that's great. Now I can monitor almost the entire Tianjing and even half of Xia. He continued, go to the database today and monitor all the departments and leaders above the level of director. Then, give me the newspaper. He said seriously, remember, don't reveal your ability to anyone. From today onwards, I'll be in charge of reviewing this information. You just need to maintain the number of people you monitor. Okay. Li Qian nodded to show that she understood. At this moment, there was a knock on the office door. Li Yonping said, come in. Lu Sheng and the blonde youth Momo were standing outside the door. When they saw Li Qian, they nodded to each other. Li Qian nodded to Li Yonping and said, then I'll go back to work. Go. Li Yonping waved his hand and looked at Lu Sheng and Momo. When Li Qian closed the door, the whole office was silent. Li Yonping looked at the two of them with a playful expression, but didn't say a word. Lu Sheng's eyes were magnanimous. He kept looking at Li Yonping and didn't show any weakness. Momo, who was standing behind Lu Sheng and being stared at by Li Yonping, seemed to be unable to bear the pressure and couldn't help but twist left and right. Don't be nervous. I called you here because I have something to tell you. Li Yonping picked up a document on the table and asked, Lu Sheng, your ability is night vision, right? You can see things in all kinds of dark environments and make the other party's eyes fall into darkness. It's a pretty good support ability. Li Yonping looked at Momo and said, your ability is electronic information feedback, right? You can directly use your brain waves to receive and feedback electronic information. Although it's not a battle-type ability, it's much more valuable than ordinary battle-type abilities. As if feeling the pressure, Lu Sheng frowned and said, our abilities were already registered when we joined Xia Dragonfinch, right? I don't know why you called us here, sir. It's very simple. I hope you can help me. Li Yonping said, I just took over to Xia Dragonfinch, so I'm not familiar with many things. If there's enough time, it'll be fine. I believe that with my strength, it won't be a problem to completely control the Xia Dragonfinch. But now, time is too tight. The Flying General is missing, and Zhurong has betrayed us. The Ice Fortress can come south at any time. I have to seize every minute to gather my strength. Deal with them. Lu Sheng was puzzled. Why do you want to find me? With the power you've displayed, I'm afraid that no one in the Xia Dragonfinch dares to disobey you. On the surface, that's true. Li Yonping nodded. The Xia Dragonfinch was an organization of ability users. The ability users in the Xia Dragonfinch naturally valued their own strength the most. After each of them discovered that they had superpowers, almost all of them felt that they were the main characters of the world and that they were invincible in the future. This confidence only gradually disappeared after they joined a Xia Dragonfinch and met more ability users. Strength was what they valued the most. Only the strongest among the aptitude users could make them submit wholeheartedly. Like Song Bang and Xia Laikong in the past, they were all like this. And Li Yonping's achievement of killing Lei Di was enough to make most of the ability users into Xia Dragonfinch accept him wholeheartedly. However, these ability users weren't the only ones into Xia Dragonfinch who believed in superpowers. A considerable portion of the ability user management into Xia Dragonfinch come from the 9 royal clans. Facing me, who grew up as a commoner, it's very difficult for them to completely obey me. There are also those commoners who don't have superpowers. They often fear power and wealth. Li Yonping spoke frankly with assurance. Apart from using strength to crush opponents, I'm not good at anything else. I'm also too lazy to learn. That's why I need you to help me integrate the power into Xia Dragonfinch. You and Momo were both discovered as commoners, right? Hong Fangzheng was also one. Unfortunately, he's dead. You just need to do what you need to do. No matter what happens, I'll be there to help you." When they heard Hong Fangzheng, Lu Sheng and Momo's expressions darkened. When they heard Ping's last words, Lu Sheng's eyes lit up. "You're saying that I can do whatever I want? Even if I have to kill someone who doesn't follow orders? As long as the result is good and you can help me control the Xia Dragonfinch's power, you can do whatever you want." Li Onping looked at Lu Sheng and said, "I promise that no one can threaten you. What do you think?" Lu Sheng immediately realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an opportunity that would allow him to reach the peak of the Xia. Originally, this opportunity would never happen in the Xia, which was controlled by the 9 royal clans. However, Li Onping had used his absolute power to clear the obstacles for him. "I understand." Lu Sheng nodded heavily. "I'll do my best." After Lu Sheng left, Li Onping's eyes became blurry. He began to think about the current situation. Right now, the biggest threat was the Fire Dragon Vanguard at the Ice Fortress in the north. The rest were the major organizations in the country and the dozen or so small countries in the south. All of them were ready to make a move. However, the latter wasn't enough to worry about. Even if they really did make a move, Li Onping would be able to solve the problem by going over to talk to them face to face. The crux of the matter was still the 4 aptitude users of the Fire Dragon Vanguard. For some reason, the Ice Fortress hadn't broken through the northern line. After the Fire Dragon Vanguard defeated the Flying General, there was no follow-up news. However, everyone knew that they could attack the south at any time. Li Onping dug up the information on the other party. Zhu Rong, a parasitic type. He could emit a temperature of more than 6,500 degrees Celsius from the surface of his body. In the battle where the Flying General went missing, he was the one who melted the entire snow mountain. White Short Star, a mutated type. He could move freely in and out of the earth and control mountains. His body was shockingly dense. He had never been injured since his debut. During the battle where the Flying General was besieged, an 8.5 magnitude earthquake was caused because of him. There was also the Blood Demon, one of the 4 Grand Dukes of the Ice Fortress. He had the ability of blood-sucking blood. Other than them, there was also the Pluto, who was regarded as the most powerful aptitude user in the Ice Fortress. Up until now, no one knew what his ability was. If it was a one-on-one, Li Onping might choose to take the initiative to attack. However, ever since the news of Lady's death had spread, the other party had been very vigilant. Zhu Rong, White Short Star, and the Blood Demon had appeared at the same time every time. As for the Pluto, he hadn't appeared since the sneak attack on Xiaolikong. I should try to get Li Qian to monitor the people in the Ice Fortress and see if I can find the Pluto. But in the end, I still have to rely on my strength. Li Onping looked at his current physical fitness. It had increased to 16. 5 points in strength, 15. 7 points in agility, and 17. 5 points in stamina. With his current strength, he was confident that he could win against most level 5 aptitude users in a one-on-one battle. However, the other party had 4 level 5 aptitude users. One level 5 aptitude user was already a moving disaster, a self-propelled nuclear bomb, not to mention 4 of them. Therefore, his current goal was to find a way to separate the other party so that he could absorb another level 5 aptitude user. The other direction was to directly increase his own strength. He already had some ideas about this, but he still needed time and manpower to realize it. The reason he had recruited Lu Sheng before was also to prepare for this. His experiences made him understand that power was the only thing that mattered. Great power, absolute power, these were the ultimate means to dominate this world. If he could devour all 4 level 5 aptitude users in the Ice Fortress, Li Onping believed that his strength would increase to a level beyond human imagination. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to accumulate power according to his plan. At the same time, he had to constantly monitor the other party and catch any mistakes made by the Fire Dragon Vanguard. A black psychic force suddenly appeared behind Li Onping's back. His expression changed as he muttered, "It's coming again." Chapter 126. Black psychic energy emerged from Li Onping's back and formed a black silhouette behind him. After that, the silhouette stopped moving. The black silhouette was about 2 meters tall. It was translucent, and its face and body were blurry. This was not the first time Li Onping had seen this black silhouette. Ever since he absorbed Lei Di's soul energy, his ability had reached level 3. His ability to absorb souls had reached an unprecedented range of 300 meters. However, at the same time, when he was alone, there would be a black psychic energy emerging from his back and forming a humanoid silhouette. At first, Li Onping thought that black had awakened. However, this silhouette was like a puppet. It could not communicate or move. It would only appear and disappear when Li Onping was alone. Li Onping tried to control it with his mind, but it did not work at all. However, he could feel that there was a huge, unknown power in the black silhouette. A few minutes later, just like before, the black silhouette suddenly collapsed. It turned into countless wisps of smoke and dissipated into the air. Li Onping felt that every time the black silhouette appeared, the power it contained was stronger than the last time. He suspected that it was either Black's problem or it was a unique change after his ability reached level 3. At the same time, in the palace, the upper echelons of the Xia were also questioning Li Onping's current situation. At a round table, 9 old men sat opposite each other. Behind each of them, there were 2 or 3 attendants. An old man from the royal family said, "Your Majesty, how can you let a commoner manage the Xia dragonfinch?" He was the head of the Sun family. "This is too reckless. This is simply ridiculous. They didn't even ask us for a vote. They didn't even hold a meeting. They didn't even discuss it. They just casually let a country bumpkin become the master of the great Xia dragonfinch. This is simply unprecedented." The person who spoke was the head of the Li family, a bald and fat old man. A middle-aged man with a fat brain said, "Remove him. The Xia dragonfinch is our most important military force. How can we let an outsider manage it?" He was the head of the Zhang family. Wang Chong only looked at them coldly. He did not say anything. However, an elegant middle-aged man beside him knocked on the conference table and said, "If he could refuse, why would he go up? Everyone, have you all forgotten the strength of a level 5 ability user?" He was the head of the Xiao family. The head of the Zhang family, who looked like a short winter melon, said in disdain, "According to the latest intelligence, Li Onping is just a level 3 ability user. Xiao Qianjun, don't try to fool me." Wang Chong gave this short winter melon a cold look, feeling even more disdain. "You haven't even looked at the most basic information. The most powerful 9 royal families in Great Xia are actually led by such a person who does not do a single thing." Just as Wang Chong was thinking, Xiao Qianjun, who was also the head of the Xiao family, said, "Old Zhang, you didn't look at Li Onping's information carefully, right? He personally killed Song Bang and Lei Di. He completely has the strength of a level 5 ability user. As for how strong a level 5 ability user is, I don't think I need to explain. If we could use force against a level 5 ability user, we would have used it a long time ago." Besides Xiao Qianjun, an old man with a goatee said, "Qianjun is right. It has been more than 40 years since the emergence of level 5 ability users in Great Xia. All these years, we have only been able to absorb them. It is impossible to eliminate them. The flying general, Zhurong, Xiao Laikong, they're all like this." The old man with the goatee was the head of the Gao family. He did not mention Song Bang because Song Bang belonged to the Song family. He could be considered one of their people. "Correct," Xiao Qianjun added. "Moreover, Li Onping has the strength of a level 5 ability user. Right now, the Fire Dragon Vanguard can head south at any time. He is our only support." The head of the Li family who had just spoken said in disdain, "A power that cannot be controlled, the greater the danger." The head of the Gao family, the old man with the goatee, laughed and said, "Control? Can we completely control Xiao Laikong, flying general, and Zhurong in the past? Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, what can we control?" As soon as he finished speaking, the other family heads around him also hurriedly joined in the discussion. The situation suddenly became a little out of control. Suddenly, a white-haired old man stood up, slammed the table, and said, Li Onping killed Song Bang. We cannot let this matter rest. Hearing him say this, all the family heads present quieted down. No one agreed. This white-haired old man was the temporary head of the Song family. Because Li Onping killed Song Bang, their family status in the family had plummeted. The Song family's power had also shrunk. Naturally, they saw Li Onping as a thorn in their side. However, the other families wouldn't care about this. They didn't wish for Li Onping to have too much power, but this didn't mean that they wanted to go against Li Onping. How powerful were level 5 ability users? The information on level 5 ability users and their families could fill up an entire soccer field. After a long silence, Wang Chong gave everyone a look. Only then did he clap his hands and say, Everyone, it was Li Onping's request to take control of the Xia Dragonfinch. I only want to ask you, after seeing his information, do you have any way of stopping him? This time, the silence was even longer. In the end, it was still Xiao Qianjun who stood up and said, Everything else aside, just as flying speed alone has already surpassed the speed of sound. Without using weapons of mass destruction, there's no chance at all. That is why I don't agree with using force. With the ice fortress eyeing us covetously, dealing with Li Onping now, regardless of whether we succeed or not, is like cutting off an arm. The short and fat head of the Zhang family sneered and said, Then are we just going to watch him take control? Hold the Xia Dragonfinch in our hands? That represents all of the ability users in the entire country. Are you going to just hand it over so casually? It's not casually, Xiao Qianjun argued. I've seen Li Onping's history. Using force is the last resort. There is no need for us to face him head-on. If he wants to lead to Xia Dragonfinch, that's fine. However, all of his subordinates are our subordinates. We can understand what he wants to do, test his bottom line. He is only one person, without his own eyes and ears. Whatever he wants to do, he still has to do it through our people. We can satisfy a portion of his demands, but we can hide it and lie about the other portion, or even most of his other demands. What if he discovers it? Who will take responsibility for this? The Li family head asked. That is why, apart from this, we can still use some small methods. Xiao Qianjun smiled mysteriously. Li Onping is only 22 years old this year. Even though he possesses great strength, he is still too young. What do you think a young man like him would like? Money, beautiful women, power, fame, we can give him all of it. Even through these things, we can slowly guide him in the direction we want him to go. The old man with the goatee said, That's right. Apart from this, we can also use family ties. I've seen Li Onping's information. He has a few good university classmates. Also, his uncle and aunt are all in Zhongdu. Even though their relationship isn't that great, it is still an entry point. We can add more power. Someone took out a document and said, when he was in Jadeite City, he had appointed a police officer called Qin Yong to take over Zhongyi Hall. Even though it was just a casual move, we can still investigate their relationship. Don't forget that there is also Xia Yunyan. Xia Laikong is indebted to Li Onping. Xia Yunyan lived with him before. The two of them have frequent contact. Perhaps we can persuade Xia Yunyan. There is also Li Qian. She seems to have a good relationship with Li Onping. We can also find someone to talk to her. The scene suddenly became lively again. Only the head of the Song family was silent. His face was gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, the people around him were obviously not interested. After the deaths of Song Tian and Song Bang, the power of the Song family was not as strong as before. In addition, Wang Chong deliberately suppressed the Song family, and the fact that the Song family had offended Li Onping, the people of the other 8 families obviously would not consider standing up for the Song family. They even hoped that the Song family would become more and more destitute and give up the benefits that originally belonged to them to the other 8 families. At the end of the meeting, Wang Chong nodded and set the tone. Then today's meeting will end here. Everyone, follow the guidelines just now, but don't be too obvious in your probing. Don't annoy Li Onping. In particular, tell your ability users to restrain themselves and not to fight him head-on. It is not easy to pass down the bloodline of the royal family. We can't lose it here. Chapter 127. The next day, Li Onping had already entered the base when he noticed the changes. Following that, the changes became more and more obvious. Female nurses, female security guards, female soldiers, female secretaries. Li Onping found that during this period of time, he could see fewer and fewer men. Almost all the people around him had become women, and all of them were young and beautiful, putting the moon and flowers to shame. Li Onping felt as if he was living in a field of flowers all day, surrounded by countless beautiful women at all times. However, these women clearly knew their limits. They didn't stick to Li Onping all the time. Instead, they did their own things. Everyone would appear near Li Onping, but they would all leave as soon as they touched him, as if they were doing business. However, Li Onping didn't feel disgusted by seeing more beautiful women. Moreover, he knew that the people above were still worried about him and were testing him. If he didn't have any distractions, completely ignored these women, and wholeheartedly did things as if he wanted to monopolize power, those old men might not feel at ease. Therefore, Li Onping let them be and thought of ways to seduce him. Moreover, Li Onping knew that as long as he opened his mouth, none of the beautiful women in the base would have any objections. Even if Li Onping wanted to capture all of them, it wouldn't be a problem. On the contrary, it would make the people above feel more at ease. However, Li Onping didn't do that. It wasn't that he wasn't interested in beautiful women, but right now, he was more focused on chasing after powerful strength and being able to change the world according to his own ideas. The military base is full of female soldiers wearing black stockings and miniskirts. Is the Xia Dragonfinch so weak that he needs these women to protect him? Hearing Li Qian's jealous voice, Li Onping smiled slightly and didn't refute. He knew that Li Qian was just venting her anger. Did you tell Wei Zhuan that I'm going to find him? Li Onping asked. Yes. Li Qian nodded. He's already waiting for you. Okay, you continue to expand the surveillance. I'll go talk to him first. After saying that, Li Onping left first, leaving Li Qian alone to look at the passing beauties with hatred. Li Onping controlled his speed and left the base in a few flashes. He then flew into the sky and disappeared without a trace after an explosion. The people who were following him and monitoring him could do nothing about it. At the same time, he recalled what had happened to Wei Zhuan recently. Since the last time he saw Wei Zhuan, the other party had been doing his best to help Li Onping operate the funds. Maybe it was because Li Onping had helped him take revenge, or maybe it was because of the mysterious strength and background that Li Onping had revealed. Not only did Wei Zhuan not dare to be greedy, he even caused his company to suffer losses in order to wash off the money Li Onping gave him. Of course, Li Onping could monitor Wei Zhuan every day through Li Qian's ability, so he wasn't afraid that the other party would cheat him of his money. With the number of people Li Qian's ability to monitor and Li Onping's current memory and analytical ability, not to mention Wei Zhuan, he could even roughly know the big and small things in Tianjing. In an office building, Wei Zhuan was sitting in a chair a little uncomfortably. Suddenly, his vision blurred and a gust of wind blew past. Li Onping had already appeared there. Any security measures existed in name only for the current Li Onping. Ordinary people and surveillance equipment couldn't even see his fast-paced figure. Wei Zhuan was shocked to see Li Onping appear. When he saw the person's appearance, he immediately stood up, but he didn't know what to say. Don't worry, I didn't come looking for you with ill intentions. Li Onping looked at Wei Zhuan calmly and said, You've done well during this period of time. Wei Zhuan said nervously, It's nothing. This is my old profession. After doing it for so many years, I'm already familiar with it. Li Onping nodded. You don't have to worry about the problem of funds in the future. It will only increase. However, I still need to trouble you with a few things. Please speak. Li Onping took out a list of names and pointed to the hundreds of names on it. These are all non-official scientists in Xia in the fields of biology, medicine, genetics, and so on. Most of them probably don't know about the existence of ability users. I hope that you can recruit most of them, at least half of them. Wei Zhuan looked at the list and frowned. Recruiting them will probably require a lot of money. Moreover, most of them are working in large hospitals research institutes, and large companies. They have their own research projects. If you want them to leave these behind, I'm afraid the price will be very high. Forgive me for being blunt, but may I ask what your purpose is? If you just want to set up a biotechnology or medicine company, you don't need so many. Li Onping shook his head and stopped Wei Zhuan from continuing. You don't have to worry about the money. In the following week, your company will receive a sum of government funding. What you need to do is to set up a biotechnology company and recruit all the experts on the list. Government funding. Wei Zhuan's heart skipped a beat. He knew that once the government was involved in this matter, it would be very messy. Just as he was hesitating, Li Onping said again, "If there's something you can't handle, just talk to yourself. I'll hear you." Actually, Li Onping was monitoring Wei Zhuan through Li Qian's ability, so he could know what Wei Zhuan was talking about. However, when he said this, it became even more mysterious in Wei Zhuan's heart. Seeing Wei Zhuan's hesitant expression, Li Onping said, "Don't worry. You don't have to worry about the specific operations. The research has nothing to do with you. You can take 10% of the funds allocated by the government. You don't have to worry about being involved in any dangerous matters." Wei Zhuan clenched his teeth and said, "I understand. Don't worry, I'll definitely do my best. However, if some people are unwilling to come, should I just give up? And what are their arrangements? You just have to find a place for them to stay. When all of them have arrived, I'll make arrangements for them. As for those who are unwilling to come," Li Onping's finger brushed past the name list, recalling the tremendous amount of information in his mind. Finally, his fingers stopped at the top of the list. "You can give up on the other people, but these 3 people should be the strongest out of all of them. No matter what means you use, you must recruit them." "I understand." Wei Zhuan nodded and said. However, when he lifted his head again, Li Onping's figure was no longer there. Only a sentence floated out in the air. "Send me the information of all the employees in your company. All of them must be accompanied by photos." Elsewhere, in one of the Secret Service's command rooms, due to Li Onping's disappearance, the place was already in a mess. What's going on? How do we lose track of him? Where are the high-speed cameras? Why didn't they capture anything? Hurry up and get the spy satellites. Find him for me. Inform the traffic police department. I want all the surveillance footage of Tianjing's roads. You must find him for me. It was not until 20 minutes later that someone shouted loudly and stood up. Found him. The target is at the intersection of 21st Avenue and 20th Avenue. Li Onping looked at the words on the newspaper in his hands, and the corners of his lips curled up into a cold smile. Although they won't be able to find me when I want to disappear, if this continues, the surveillance on me will become increasingly strict. I'm afraid there will be a lot of unnecessary trouble. The people from the Secret Service would never have thought that their every move would be seen by Li Onping. Li Qian's ability was really too terrifying, especially after evolving to the first energy level. She only needed a photo and a name to display her ability. In less than a week's time, every time she monitored a person, she would discover more targets that were worth monitoring. Li Onping would then get the photos and names of these people and send them to Li Qian. Currently, the range of Li Qian's surveillance had exceeded 100,000 people. Even if Li Onping's brain had become stronger, he still needed to spend 4 to 5 hours every day in the wee hours of the morning to process this information. However, the information advantage this brought was unparalleled. For example, in Wei Zhuan's company, through monitoring everyone, he could ensure that no information that should not be leaked out. However, he could not let the Secret Service lose their surveillance on him forever. Li Onping thought of Lu Feng. His transformation ability was very useful at this time. If there was such a person as Li Onping's substitute, he could use the Xia Dragonfinch's position to do more things without telling the higher-ups. Also, Wei Zhuan's biological project required too much funding. Li Onping knew that he would not be able to hide it from the higher-ups, especially when he was under such heavy surveillance. Therefore, he simply allocated 30% of the Xia Dragonfinch's annual budget. In addition, he also planned to transfer a group of experts from the Xia Dragonfinch to study together with the experts invited by Wei Zhuan. With the help of Li Qian's ability, He was confident that no important information about this research would be leaked. However, at the moment, this project still lacked a leader with high attainments in the field of biology, genetics, and genetics. Who should I choose to be in charge of this ability user cloning project? Li Onping thought. If this project is completely successful, then it won't be long before I become an invincible existence on this planet. It still had to be done slowly. Every country had already done related research in secret, but their goals were different from his. However, whether it was the construction of the research institute, the availability of personnel, the availability of funds, the various instruments and equipment, plus the time spent on the research itself, it all had to be done slowly. This was a long-term project. Before this, Li Onping still had to deal with the four guys in the north. Chapter 128. When he thought of the four level 5 ability users in the north, Li Onping felt both happy and troubled. He was happy because the four level 5 ability users could each greatly increase his strength, but the trouble was that these four level 5 ability users could head south at any time and lead the Ice Fortress army to invade Xia. Li Onping couldn't place all of his bets on the other side, making a mistake. So while waiting for an opportunity, he had to seize the time to increase his strength. Just as Li Onping was thinking of this, his phone rang. "Hello, is this Li Qian? What's the matter?" Li Onping took out his phone and asked. "It's Lu Sheng's side. He gathered some ability users in Beijing who are responsible for combat. It seems like there's a problem, and he needs your help." "Understood. Where are they?" Li Onping nodded. "I understand. You don't need to worry about this matter. I'll head over immediately." After hanging up, Li Onping looked at his surroundings and roughly recalled the location of the Xiaolongke base. The next moment, a bang sounded from the bottom of his feet. He had already shot into the sky and flew into the distance. Only a shattered cement floor was left behind. There were also more than 10 witnesses who continuously cried out in alarm as they looked at the black in the distance that was getting smaller and smaller. With Li Onping's departure, the secret agency, which had just calmed down, was once again thrown into chaos. They searched for Li Onping's tracks, comforted the witnesses, and cleaned up the scene. They were really swamped with work. When Li Onping arrived at Lu Sheng's side, he saw that in the underground training room, more than 10 people had surrounded Lu Sheng alone. They were all sizing him up with bad intentions, looking like a group of perverts bullying a good student. "What's going on?" Seeing that Li Onping had arrived, those people unwillingly and slowly dispersed. However, some sat down, some leaned against the wall. They didn't seem to care about Lu Sheng and Li Onping at all. Lu Sheng saw Lu Onping's question and replied a bit awkwardly. "They're all ability users from the 1st Brigade. I want to separate the people from the 4 main brigades." Li Onping raised his hand to stop Lu Sheng from continuing. He already knew what was going on. He recalled the information on Xia Dragonfinch's main ability users in his mind. In Xia Dragonfinch, the main ability users were in the 1st to 4th Brigades, led by the 4 level 5 ability users from Xia Dragonfinch. The 1st Brigade, which was the military police force, was originally under Song Bang's command. They were mainly responsible for fighting internal ability user battles. However, ever since Song Bang disappeared, this brigade had always been uncooperative. Not a single one of them even came to fight against Lei Di last time. Lu Sheng wanted to help Li Onping integrate the Xia Dragonfinch's power, so he naturally needed the 4 main brigades. However, of the 4 brigades, the 3rd Brigade, led by Zhurong, was stationed on the northern front all year round and was responsible for frontal assaults. Currently, the entire brigade had already defected. The 2nd and 4th Brigades, led by Xia Laikong, and the Flying General were mainly responsible for defense and special operations. During this period of time, more than half of them had been killed or injured in the ambush on Xia Laikong, Lei Di's attack, and the disappearance of the Flying General. Therefore, the 1st Brigade was currently the most complete brigade. Moreover, as the military police force, they controlled many of the Xia Dragonfinch's positions of power. If Lu Sheng wanted to help Li Onping integrate the Xia Dragonfinch's power and control, the 1st Brigade was an unavoidable hurdle. When Lu Sheng was halfway through his speech, a man from the 1st Brigade with a scorpion tattoo on his face immediately walked up. He seemed to have quite a bit of prestige among the crowd. He stood up and said, "Sir Li, if you want our brothers to work for you, that's not a problem. However, what's the meaning of letting Lu Sheng lead us? Is he more experienced than us? Is his position higher than ours? He can't even beat me. Why should we listen to him? Yes, he's so weak. Why should we listen to him? We want an explanation." "That's right, Li Anping. You can't just insert your own people into our ranks as you wish. The Xia Dragonfinch isn't owned by your family. You have to give us an explanation." Their information flashed through Li Anping's mind. He looked at the members of the 1st Brigade in front of him, their expressions undisciplined and uncooperative. A cold glint appeared in his eyes. Li Anping suddenly took a step forward, his foot stepping on the cement floor beneath his feet. The floor of this training room was completely paved with a special type of cement up to 5 meters thick. In order to resist the destructive power of ability users, this special type of cement had extremely strong defensive properties. Even if a normal level 4 ability user used all their strength, they would only be able to leave a crack or mark on it. However, it was precisely this type of sturdy cement floor that, under Li Anping's foot, exploded like a volcano. Countless pebbles flew out in all directions under the tremendous pressure. When the dust settled, they could see that in front of Li Anping, there was already a large hole with a diameter of 2 to 3 meters. The few people who were closest to him were even struck by the flying pebbles. They continuously retreated and fell to the ground. They more or less had a few broken bones, releasing waves of pain cries. At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They looked at Li Anping as if they were looking at a monster. He didn't use any qi, nor did he use any ability. In the most pure form, he completely relied on his physical body to kick. It was practically comparable to the power of a tank's main cannon. This is my explanation. Li Anping looked at the shocked faces of these people and said word by word, "I don't care which family is behind you, who instigated you to cause trouble, who is your backer. From today onwards, you only need to listen to my orders, and I don't need to listen to any nonsense or excuses from you." When Li Anping stomped on the ground and said these words, the entire scene was dead silent. Even a few people who had their bones broken by the pebbles tried their best to hold it in, not daring to cry out in pain. Some people opened their mouths, but couldn't say a word. There were also a few people who wanted to say something, but their companions covered their mouths and held them down. A minute later, no one dared to breathe out loud. They seemed to have only just remembered that the man in front of them was the one who defeated Song Bang, killed Lei Di, had strength comparable to a 5th energy rank, and was as powerful as a natural disaster. Lu Sheng, who was watching from the side, felt a surge of emotions. This was the awe brought about by absolute power. In the face of such absolute power, all of their lives were in his hands. All power, wealth, and background were nothing. Li Anping's method of showing off his power was simply tyrannical to the extreme. Lu Sheng only felt that this was how an ability user, especially a 5th-level ability user, should act when facing the weak. Explain? I don't need to explain to you at all. This was the feeling he yearned for after living with his tail between his legs for so many years into Xia Dragonfinch. At this moment, his gaze towards Li Anping became even more fervent. Li Anping looked at the people of the 1st Brigade who were like defeated roosters, standing there trembling in fear, and said indifferently, "Then you all will start following Lu Sheng from now on. He will train you, and his orders will be my orders from now on." Then, under Li Anping's gaze, Lu Sheng commanded the people of the 1st Brigade to stand in line and count off. The ability users who were still relaxed and careless before were all standing straight now. Although their movements were not uniform, the expression on their faces was very serious, and no one dared to ignore Lu Sheng's orders. However, after Li Anping heard them count off, he glanced over and frowned, asking, "What's going on? There should be a total of 19 people in the 1st Brigade in Beijing, right? Where did the other 2 go?" Li Anping had already memorized the information of the 1st Brigade after looking through it. Now that he counted off, he noticed that the number of people was not right. Under Li Onping's intense gaze, no one could stand the pressure. The man with the scorpion tattoo on his face who spoke first stood up again and said carefully, "It's Zhang Kuang and Li Tai. They're sick and really can't get up." Li Onping snorted coldly, not believing this man's nonsense at all. To be able to enter the 1st Brigade as military police, they were at least level 3 ability users with psychic energy protection and had received military training all year round. How could they be so sick that they couldn't get up? Seeing Li Onping's unhappy expression, the man hurriedly said, "I'll go call them over right now." After saying that, he hurriedly ran off. Chapter 129. The man had only taken a few steps when he felt a blur in front of his eyes. Li Onping had already appeared in front of him. "Let's go and take a look together. I'm very reasonable. If they're really sick, it's fine to take a few days off." Li Onping did not think that the other party was really sick. The people in the 1st Brigade were undisciplined and did not listen to orders. When these two people heard Lu Sheng's summons, they did not even come. They were obviously the thorns of the thorns in the team. Perhaps they had some background and felt that Li Onping and Lu Sheng would not do anything to them. Perhaps they were not convinced that Lu Sheng could manage them, even though he was not as strong as them in a one-on-one fight. They might even be a chess piece used by the higher-ups to test Li Onping. Or perhaps they had their own special reasons. However, they did not listen to Li Onping's orders when he first reorganized the team. In that case, Li Onping did not intend to let them off easily. Seeing that Li Onping wanted to go and take a look, the expression of the man with the scorpion tattoo on his face changed. There were even people who walked out from the team. They forcibly suppressed their fear of Li Onping and explained, "Sir, they just forgot to take a sick leave. We'll just call the 2 of them." Li Onping only stared at him for 2 seconds. Then he waved his hand. His fist only lightly brushed against the man's chest, but an irresistible force had already sent him flying. The man flew more than 100 meters in the air before landing on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. The crowd, which had been a little restless, immediately quieted down again. They looked at Li Onping with eyes full of fear. Li Onping did not even look at the guy who flew out. He glared at the man with the scorpion tattoo and shouted, "Why aren't you leading the way?" The man could not help but tremble when he was glared at by Li Onping. Thinking of Li Onping's previous words, he did not dare to argue anymore. He lowered his head and led the way. Lu Sheng shouted at the remaining people, "Do your own warm-up training. Wait for me to come back for group combat." After saying that, he quickly followed Li Onping and whispered that Zhang Kuang and Li Tai are from the Zhang and Li families of the 9 great royal clans. It's better not to offend him too much. Li Onping shook his head and ignored Lu Sheng. He knew that Lu Sheng was afraid that he would offend the 9 royal clans and be isolated among the higher-ups of the Xia, but Li Onping had his own plans. In the past, the reason why the 9 royal families were able to rule the Xia was because they were all bloodline ability users and possessed the greatest power. Ever since the emergence of level 5 ability users, the few level 5 ability users kept each other in check, and no one was able to dominate. Even Song Bang didn't dare to offend people from other families. However, in the entire Xia Dragonfinch, only Li Onping had the strength of a level 5 ability user. His strength was even greater than Song Bang's in the past, so he had less to worry about. Therefore, regardless of whether the first platoon's unwillingness to cooperate this time was a test of his bottom line by the higher-ups, he did not plan to give in. Because for these aristocratic families and royal families, giving in once would only make them want a yard after taking an inch. Although he would not attack these aristocratic family for the time being, that would be destroying his own Great Wall and taking on the pressure of the Fire Dragon Vanguard alone. However, if they still wanted to control the Xia Dragonfinch like before and extend their claws, he would directly chop off their claws. A few minutes later, under the man's lead, Li Onping and Lu Sheng arrived in front of the door. Just as the man was about to knock on the door, Li Onping directly pushed him aside and kicked the steel door open. With a loud bang, the steel door flew out. The scene in the room was immediately presented in front of Li Onping. Ivory, carpet, oil paintings, various antique vases, a small bar, a sofa, and a 3D projection screen. This room was much more luxurious than the other rooms in the base. Even Li Onping's own room in Xia Dragonfinch couldn't compare. Just by looking at this, Li Onping knew how arrogant these two people were in the team. He saw two young men sitting on the sofa with a female soldier in their arms. When they heard the sound of the door being knocked, they both stood up and looked towards Li Onping. One of them was Li Tai. He directly shouted, "Who are you? We'll let you barge in." The other arrogant man wanted to say something, but he saw Li Onping take a step forward and grab Li Tai by the neck and throw him against the wall. With a boom, the man who was thrown out crashed into the wall, creating a huge dent. He felt as if his internal organs had been squeezed together. He then fell to the ground and stopped moving. It was unknown if he was dead or alive. The remaining arrogant man's countenance changed as he bellowed furiously, "How dare you? Do you know who we are?" Li Onping couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense. With a cold snort, he slapped Zhang Kuang's face. That man's body instantly spun as he was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, there was a big lump on his cheek. The pitiful Zhang Kuang had been living a life of luxury since he was young. Even when he came to the Xia Dragonfinch, he was still a gold-plated soldier. He had never been humiliated like this before. Unable to bear the humiliation, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Li Onping threw a cold glance at the two female soldiers who were standing there in a daze. Their clothes were disheveled. He said, "The two of you are fired. Pack up your clothes and leave." After saying that, he ignored their pleas and said to the man with the scorpion tattoo, "What's your name?" "Scorpion." "Scorpion." Scorpion looked at Li Onping as if he was looking at a lunatic. "Why aren't you carrying them to the training room? The training isn't over yet." Yes. Scorpion rushed to Zhang Kuang and Li Tai in a panic. After finding out that the two of them had only fainted and that their lives weren't in danger, he heaved a sigh of relief. Li Onping then said to Lu Sheng, "Train them well. If there's any trouble in the future, look for me at any time." He then left, leaving behind a dumbfounded Lu Sheng. However, he believed that after his thunderous methods, there wouldn't be anyone in the 1st Battalion who would dare to disobey his orders. Next, he waited quietly for the reactions of the Li clan, the Zhang clan, and even the 9 great royal clans. Over the next few days, everyone in the Xiaolong K base was waiting to see a good show. They wanted to see what the Zhang and Li clans, who had been humiliated, would do. However, the actual situation was strangely calm. Neither the Zhang clan nor the Li clan had any reaction to Li Onping's actions. Zhang Kuang and Li Tai also applied to resign the next day and quit the Xia Dragonfinch. Li Onping immediately approved. At this point, everyone could see that the leaders of the 9 great royal clans had compromised with Li Onping. Over the next few days, with the help of Lu Sheng, Li Onping continuously seized control of the Xia Dragonfinch. With Li Onping's absolute power, the other forces kept retreating. Li Onping gradually integrated the 1st Battalion to the 4th Battalion, all the main battle ability users of the Xia Dragonfinch, and merged them into an unprecedentedly large army of ability users. In Li Onping's hands, this sinister monster was able to display endless power, continuously accelerating the speed of Li Onping's plan. At the same time, the 9 great royal clans extended their power to the military, finance, and normal staff of the Xia Dragonfinch, attempting to firmly grasp these powers in their hands and eliminate the influence that ability users had on them in the past. They wanted Li Onping to become a rootless duckweed. However, Li Onping knew that his foundation wasn't enough. Being able to control the Xia Dragonfinch's main battle ability users was already his limit. He also didn't consider controlling the military or normal staff. After all, these things were still external objects, methods to increase his own power. In the short span of a week, although Li Onping and the 9 great royal clans' secret contest seemed to be turbulent, there were more and more beautiful women in the Xia Dragonfinch's base. Apart from the irreplaceable ability users, most of the normal staff were gradually replaced with beautiful women between the ages of 18 to 35. Li Onping entered the base every day, feeling as if he had entered a talent show, with all kinds of girls being chosen. It looked like the Xia's higher-ups still hadn't given up on seducing Li Onping. Unfortunately, up until now, not a single woman had been able to have a relationship with Li Onping. For a time, the people who created this plan doubted Li Onping's interest and considered whether or not they should send a few strong and beautiful youths to the Xia Longke base to work. On the other side, Li Onping watched as the team was gradually integrated and began to consider whether or not to carry out the next step of his plan. Chapter 130. The plan to clone an ability user was a long-term plan, and it was something that was clearly prohibited by international law. In addition to the technical problems, it might take a few years, or even more than a decade, to perfectly clone an ability user. There was also a chance that it might not succeed. After all, it was easy to clone an ordinary person, but it was still very difficult to completely clone an ability user and their ability. As for the Fire Dragon Vanguard, it had to wait for the other party to give Li Onping an opportunity, and it also lacked initiative and maneuverability. Therefore, apart from these two plans, Li Onping also had plans to target the other ability users in the country. And he wanted Lu Sheng to integrate the Xia Dragonfinch and have actual control over the ability users for this purpose. By controlling the Xia Dragonfinch, they could wantonly capture the ability users in the country. The good ones would be kept, and the bad ones would be executed directly by Li Onping. While increasing the Xia Dragonfinch's power, Li Onping's own power would be increased. However, it still depended on the situation of Lu Sheng's training. Those ability users had been on the front lines for a long time, and they were very aggressive and unruly. Every one of them had more or less killed people. Some even had mental problems. If they were released to capture people, once they were not controlled, it would be like releasing a tiger back to the mountain, and it would cause serious damage to the Xia society. Therefore, he planned to add some precautions for these people. Unless he had no other choice, Li Onping did not want these ability users to cause too much damage to ordinary people's society. The increase in his power from ordinary people was negligible. Now, every 1 increase in his attributes would probably cost the lives of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. If Li Onping really did that, he would probably be like the moving disaster Demir Tanner, who would be besieged by strong people all over the world. To him, an even better hunting target was an ability user, especially a level 4 and level 5 ability user. They could all increase his strength, but from level 3 onwards, the increase was no longer very obvious. Ordinary people, on the other hand, were the foundation of society and would be his best logistical support. Through absolute power, he could control ordinary people and let them generate wealth and power. The more ordinary people there were, the more aptitude users there would be. As technology continued to improve, the cloning project would be carried out more smoothly and his various plans would be more convenient. It could be said that normal people were the soil, lower-level ability users were the seeds, and higher-level ability users were the fruits Li Onping hoped to obtain. Li Onping was half-naked in a training room made entirely of alloy. He threw a punch through the air. With a crackling sound, the air was compressed by a tremendous force and shot out toward Li Onping like a light pillar. With a bang, it hit the alloy wall, leaving a dent of more than 10 centimeters. In the face of such a powerful destructive force, Li Onping shook his head. This punch did not meet his requirements. His original goal was to concentrate the power of this punch on a single point and explode, forming an air cannon that would squeeze out all the air in the target space for a short period of time. In this way, a pseudo-vacuum state could be formed. Li Onping called this move Vacuum Ring. This was a move he created for the sake of dealing with level 5 ability users in the future. After all, every single level 5 ability user had already broken free from their mortal bodies. Simple punches and kicks and other ordinary moves often couldn't deal with them. Li Onping needed more moves that could produce different types of attack effects. However, after Li Onping's practice, the success rate of Vacuum Ring wasn't high. mainly because his control over the power of his fist wasn't enough. He still needed more practice. 2 hours later, the sweaty Lianping took a shower, planning to see how Lu Sheng's training was going. However, as soon as he walked out of the training room, he saw Yang Guang leaning against the wall. When he saw Lianping come out, he immediately stood up respectfully. Lianping gave him a look, noticing that Yang Guang's hands and feet that were vaporized by Lei Di had already been connected to metal prosthetics. If one didn't look carefully, he wouldn't be any different from a normal person. Yang Guang lowered his head, saying with a respectful expression, "Sir, Officer Lu Sheng said that you wanted to check on the progress of your training, so he asked me to bring you over." Lianping thought for a bit, then said, "Is there something else you came for?" He knew that Yang Guang was originally the same as Lu Sheng and the others, one of the flying general's subordinates in Beijing. However, because of their different personalities and methods of doing things, the two of them didn't get along. When Yang Guang heard Lianping's question, his expression changed, as if he had made up his mind. He looked at Lianping and said, "Sir, I hope that I could be like Lu Sheng and become your subordinate. I joined a Xia Dragonfinch when I was 20 because this is the strongest ability user organization in all of the Xia. I became the Flying General subordinate because he is the strongest level 5 ability user among all ability users. It is because I know that only by following the strongest can I live a better life in this increasingly chaotic world." He suddenly half knelt down, looking at Lianping with a fervent expression. "But now, I have met you. What exactly are you trying to say?" Lianping shot him a look. "When you were the 2nd level, you already had enough strength to resist a 5th level ability user. I believe that before long, you will become the strongest ability user in this world." Yang Guang said from the bottom of his heart, "You will become history. I want to follow you. I want to become the sharp sword in your hands, to sweep away all enemies for you." Lianping looked at the sincere Yang Guang, not saying anything. This fella might have seen Lianping's great strength, as well as the 9 great royal clans' compromise, so he wanted to get on the same boat. It might really be like what he said, crazily worshipping the strong, worshipping great strength. However, regardless of what his reason was, Lianping wasn't interested in paying attention. If he was obedient, he would use him. If he wasn't, he would just kill him and turn him into his own strength. That was all. 10 minutes later, Lianping arrived at the sports field where Lu Sheng and the main combat ability users were training. As soon as he arrived, he saw 2 teams of 30 ability users currently having a rugby match. There were also 30 or so people doing warm-up exercises off the field, as if preparing for the next match. Lu Sheng sat on a chair, watching their match and training. Lianping didn't disturb Lu Sheng and the others. He carefully watched the match on the sports field, discovering that this type of ability user rugby match was much more exciting than a normal rugby match. On the field, everyone was level 3 to level 4 ability users. All sorts of super speed, super strength, fire, lightning, gas attacks, as well as the collision of psychic energy. Although they clearly didn't go for the kill, almost everyone was already injured. Compared to a rugby match, this was more like a street brawl. However, regardless of whether it was between ability users, in terms of offense, defense, or support, it all showed that they were very experienced. As expected of Xia's top ability user team, if they were on the battlefield, a team of 60 or so people like this would be enough to sweep away a modern army of over 10,000 people. However, once this team went out of control, the impact it would cause would be extremely bad. That was why in the past, the Xia Dragonfinch had divided them into 4 teams, all of which were directly led by level 5 ability users. Moreover, there would be people stationed in Beijing every once in a while. Meanwhile, in other cities, there would often only be 1 or 2 high-level ability users left behind. That was why Lianping planned to give this team a layer of insurance. Lianping gave Yang Guang a look, and the latter ran toward the sports field, shouting, "Everyone gather!" Instantly, everyone's gaze turned towards Lianping's direction. When they recognized that it was Lianping who had arrived, their expressions all became serious. They didn't say a single word, immediately putting down what they were doing and lining up in front of Li Onping. However, Lu Sheng revealed a puzzled expression when he saw Yang Guang standing behind Li Onping. Including Lu Sheng and Yang Guang, there were a total of 68 ability users present, all of whom were level 3 or above combat ability users. Because these ability users' physiques were all quite good, it only took them 20 or so seconds to line up in 4 rows, completely assembled. After the previous incident, in the entire de Xiaolong K base, there was already no one who dared to go against Li Onping's orders. Meanwhile, when they directly faced Li Onping's gaze, these ability users who were all powerful enough to dominate an area all behaved as obediently as kittens. It was because they knew that compared to ability users like them, the youth in front of them who only looked a bit strong was the true monster. Li Onping's eyes swept over them. When his gaze landed on a certain area, the ability users there couldn't help but lower their heads, turning their eyes away, not daring to meet his gaze. Seeing that there was no difference in the number of people, Li Onping slowly said, "I came here to say 2 things. First, from today onwards, Lu Sheng will be the leader, and Yang Guang will be the assistant. We will jointly lead you, and you will no longer be divided into 4 groups. From now on, you will be a unit, and the name of the unit will be the Dragon Sparrow Guards. You will directly listen to my orders." Hearing Li Onping's words, although everyone had their own opinions, under Li Onping's pressure, no one dared to interrupt. Everyone held their breaths and quietly listened to Li Onping's next words. Second, after the Dragon Sparrow Guards are established, there will immediately be missions. However, before the missions, in order to ensure the success rate of the missions, each of you must undergo a psychological evaluation. The person doing the evaluation is Li Qian. She will come to find you in a moment, and what you need to do is to answer truthfully no matter what question she asks you. In the future, this kind of psychological evaluation will be done once a month. This was the insurance that Li Onping added. Through Li Qian's ability, everyone in the unit would be monitored. After saying this, Li Onping said indifferently, "Is there a problem?" Everyone shouted in unison, "No." Li Onping glanced at everyone again, leaving Yang Guang behind, and left without saying anything. The Fire Dragon Vanguard could come back at any time. He had to seize the time to strengthen himself, and there were still many things to do. Chapter 131. Li Onping walked towards his office. Everyone he met on the way, regardless of whether they were ability users or normal staff, all of them nodded respectfully when they saw him. In a short period of time, Li Onping had already won the respect of most people in the base with his absolute strength. This was a personal strength that even the country's authority had to be wary of. This was also a unique situation that would only occur in this era where level 5 ability users appeared. This was definitely unimaginable in the past, because when there were no level 5 ability users, even the strongest level 4 ability users would still have to submit to the country's machinery. After all, no matter how strong a normal level 4 ability user's battle prowess was, when faced with a surging flood of steel and countless advanced weapons, they still wouldn't be able to resist. However, when an ability reached the 5th level, ability users would have already begun to transcend the boundaries of humans, and the threat of normal human weapons would be reduced to the lowest possible level. A few minutes later, when Li Onping was halfway through his walk, a beautiful girl with a hint of foxy charm walked in front of Li Onping. The girl looked very young, and her figure was curvaceous. She wore a black work uniform, dressed like a secretary. She gave off a different kind of erotic feeling. This was the first time Li Onping had seen this girl. Compared to the other girls he had seen in the base these past few days, she wasn't much prettier. After all, the girls sent over from the base during this period of time were all top-quality beauties carefully selected by the 9 great clans. Most of them had received higher education, and their manners were elegant. Their temperaments were outstanding, and they weren't just simply beautiful. However, this girl who looked a bit foxy in front of him, although she might not be as pretty as them, gave Li Onping a kind of breathtaking feeling. "Excuse me, are you Officer Li Onping?" The girl asked. "Who are you? What's the matter?" The girl said with a smile, "Hello, officer. I am Xiao Xuesu, the Xia Dragonfinch who just arrived." She had followed her family's arrangements to get close to Li Onping, so that it would be easier for her to show off her beauty. Xiao Xuesu thought to herself, "If I can catch his eye, then I can tie him to the Xiao family's war chariot. At that time, he will become the second Song Bang, and my position in the family will also rise. If that's the case, next year's imperial selection might also." Thoughts constantly flashed through Xiao Xuesu's mind. She was only a concubine of Xiao family, and was also a woman. Although she had inherited the bloodline ability, due to the limitations of the Xiao family's ability, she had never received much attention. This time, when she found out that the clan was going to select a girl to get close to Li Onping, it was she who volunteered. After all, this was a rare opportunity. Otherwise, a concubine-born woman like her would be given away like a gift in a few years if she didn't have any achievements. She would be sacrificed in a political marriage. At that time, she wouldn't have any freedom at all. This was something that Xiao Xuesu was absolutely unwilling to do. She knew very well how terrifying things like political marriages were. She might not be confident in other aspects, but when it came to seducing men, she had been successful since she was young. Thinking of this, the girl's smile became even sweeter. The charming look on her face was enough to make an ordinary man unable to resist. Unfortunately, the person she was facing was Li Onping. Li Onping only glanced at her briefly and did not look at her again. He walked right past her. At this moment, two beauties walked over from afar, looking at Xiao Xuesu with hostility. One of them, a long-legged beauty with a height of over 170 centimeters, said, "Sir, His Majesty has something to discuss with you. He invites you to the palace for a gathering." Li Onping nodded to show that he understood, leaving Xiao Xuesu standing there angrily. This bunch of old things, where did they find so many women? It can't be that they've overreached themselves, right? Xiao Xuesu looked at Li Onping's back view with an unconvinced expression. It was just like how she had always been the center of attention wherever she went since she was young. No matter which man it was, as long as she curled her toes, they would immediately kneel down and beg to do things for her. Who would have thought that the first time she took the initiative to seduce someone, she would fail? On the other side, Li Onping sat in a black sedan accompanied by two beautiful female officers and headed straight for the imperial city. The taller of the two officers was called Miyuki. The shorter one, who looked like a junior high school student, was called Bai Qing. They were the assistants sent by the higher-ups a few days ago. They were in charge of Li Onping's daily needs. Along the way, the two of them had wanted to say something or twist their bodies to get closer to Li Onping. However, the ominous aura that kept on emitting from Li Onping kept on suppressing them, making them feel as if they were sitting next to a lion. They did not dare to make any unnecessary movements. Even when the sedan stopped at the palace's entrance, the two of them were unable to make any movements. They could only look on in annoyance as Li Onping was brought into the palace by Antero. On the way, Antero brought Li Onping deep into the palace. There were a few times when he wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Just as Li Onping and Miyuki were about to reach their destination, Antero suddenly asked, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Antero looked at the expressionless Li Onping and let out a bitter laugh. He said, "I still can't hide it from you. The reason His Majesty has asked you to go over is because the people from the League of Stars are here." The League of Stars. Li Onping frowned. He thought of Shang Junhai, whom he had yet to meet, and Bromon, the messenger of the League of Stars, who appeared at the Song family last time. Yes, the League of Stars. Antero sighed with a complicated look on his face. They are here to mediate between us and the Ice Fortress. Just like 10 years ago, they didn't allow us to attack the Ice Fortress. This time, they want to stop the Ice Fortress from attacking Xia. Li Onping asked in surprise, "What do they plan to do?" It is said that the Ice Fortress has suspended the deployment of troops on the northern front a week ago, Antero said with reverence. So today, the messenger of the League of Stars came to see His Majesty. They hope to reach a series of agreements with us when the ice fortress stops attacking. What agreements? I don't know, but it's very likely to involve our country's internal affairs. Unfortunately, among the 9 royal families, except for the Wang, Shao, and Gao families, the patriarchs of the other 6 families all plan to bring in the power of the League of Stars. Antero glanced at Li Anping and said, because they hope that there is a force in the country that can restrain you. To be honest, although you haven't done much during this period, they still feel a strong sense of oppression. Because they have been at the peak of power for a long time, they can't bear it after being suppressed by me a little. If you weren't a level 5 ability user, but a civilian, you would have been cut into pieces long ago. Antero sneered. More than half of the 9 royal families may have really decayed. Li Anping looked at Antero in surprise. He didn't expect this small leader of the Secret Service to say such a thing. Antero ignored Li Anping's gaze and continued. This is what His Majesty told you. But since I've already said this, I'll continue. In fact, His Majesty, the patriarchs of the Shao and Gao families hope to use your power to isolate the League of Stars from Xia. With the power of the League of Stars, once Xia takes the initiative to open the country to them, it's conceivable that in less than 10 years, this place will become another Dongyang and become the backup base of the League of Stars. 10 years ago, the League of Stars attacked the Xia Dragonfinch. Although they were successful, they retreated from Xia under the pressure of other big countries and had to give up the fruit that was within their reach. But in the past 10 years, the power of the League of Stars grew stronger and stronger. Even big countries such as the Ice Fortress, the Armester Federation, and the Code State could no longer completely suppress it. Once Xia took the initiative to allow the League of Stars to reach out, it would be difficult for other countries to find an excuse to interfere. After Antero finished speaking, he looked at Li Anping with a sincere face. But what he didn't know was that compared to the control of the League of Stars, Xia falling into Li Anping's hands in the future was something he didn't want to see. That would be a bottomless darkness. Until the two of them walked to a conference room, Li Anping didn't give Antero any answer. Standing outside the door, Antero watched Li Anping walk into the conference room. His eyes were full of worry. The original 4 5th-level ability users have become a 3rd-level ability user with 5th-level combat power. Even if Li Anping agrees, can he really resist the infiltration of the League of Stars? Antero didn't want to think about the answer to this question. He could only watch Li Anping walk into the conference room and watch Xia gradually walk in a direction he didn't know. Chapter 132. Half an hour ago, in the palace's conference room, including Wang Chong, the 9 heads of the 9 royal families were all present. In addition, there were also 2 foreigners in the conference room. A tall, well-dressed blond man was fiddling with a lighter in his hand. Impressively, it was the League of Stars emissary Bromon that appeared in Song Bang's home last time. The current Bromon was nowhere near the sorry state he was in when he faced Li Anping and Song Bang in the Song family. On the contrary, he was in high spirits, his face full of arrogance, looking at the 9 heads of the families present with an attitude of looking down on them. Even when his eyes swept past Emperor Wang Chong, a trace of unnoticeable contempt flashed through his eyes. Bromon dared to do this because he naturally had his confidence. And his confidence, one was the huge background of the League of Stars, and the other was the middle-aged man with a head of messy hair next to him. The man had a large hooked nose. His dark green eyes gave people a feeling of greed and cunning. His name was Air, a level 4 ability user. His ability was mind control. He could use mind invasion to control all ability users lower than him. Even ability users of the same level would be dazed, hallucinated, dizzy, and other side effects because of mind invasion. This kind of ability user was already outstanding among level 4 ability users. But the most important thing wasn't this. It was the Xia Dragonfinch's current strongest ability user, Li Anping, who had the strength of a level 5 ability user. His level was only level 3. There weren't any level 5 ability users in the entire Xia Dragonfinch. In other words, there wasn't anyone higher than Deer. Thinking to this point, Bromon couldn't help but grin. Li Onping, a level 3 ability user with the strength of a level 5 ability user. This was simply a gift from the heavens. After Deer controlled Li Onping, Bromon believed that his position in the League of Stars would be greatly improved. And after Li Onping was controlled, the entire Xia would no longer be an obstacle for Bromon. This country would gradually fall into the control of the League of Stars, or his control. Thinking to this point, Bromon looked at the 9 heads of the families with even more contempt in his eyes. The head of the Li family, the short and fat Li Wei, smiled and said, "Lord Bromon, this dispute between us and the Ice Fortress has really been hard on you. We'll have to ask for your guidance in the future." Sure enough, the League of Stars is the most advanced ability users. That's right. The head of the Zhang family, Zhang Yanheng, who looked like a short winter melon, also smiled and said, "Our Xia Dragonfinch is too chaotic right now, especially with Li Onping relying on his strength to commit all sorts of outrages, distorting right and wrong, and oppressing the loyal." Sigh, it's a pity that we've led the wolf into the house, only now discovering the wolf's ambition. We still have to rely on the comrades in the League of Stars to uphold justice. Old Zhang is right. This kind of greedy, selfish people should have been killed long ago. The representative of the Song family, Song Guozhong, said. His heart was filled with resentment towards Li Onping. If Li Onping hadn't killed Song Bang, the Song family wouldn't have been in such dire straits. He wished he could break Li Onping's limbs and torture him in a pit of feces. It was the same for the head of the Li family. When he saw his grandson, Li Tai, lying on a hospital bed, he passed out on the spot. In the entire Li family, there were only a total of 7 people who had awakened their bloodline abilities, including Li Tai. Li Tai was the only one who had reached the 3rd energy level. However, a commoner who came from a small place actually beat him half to death just because he had some abilities. He even wanted to ride on the coattails of the 9 royals. Initially, he still wanted to act secretly and slowly control Li Onping through some sinister means. When the time came, he would make him a dog of the Li family. However, he didn't expect the League of Stars to come looking for him. Hence, Li Wei immediately decided to kill him with a borrowed knife. On the other hand, Zhang Yanheng also had similar thoughts. "Li Onping, didn't you want to bully us just because you have strong combat abilities? In that case, we'll find a stronger League of Stars to deal with you. Let's see what you can do." Thinking of his grandson Zhang Kuang's cracked cheeks and Li Onping's unlucky ending, Zhang Yanheng really wanted to laugh out loud. "I must kneel down in front of Kuang and apologize to him," Zhang Yanheng thought. Ha! In the face of the 2 people's compliments, Bromon just nodded reservedly. He was very satisfied with the performance of the 2 people from Xia in front of him. Although these 2 guys were short and ugly, they were very good at pleasing people. Compared to when he was in front of Song Bang and felt the pressure of a level 5 ability user, these weaklings made him feel more comfortable. Indeed, the Xia should be such a backup base. A low-level race like them shouldn't have level 5 ability users. They should have been producing level 3 and level 4 ability users for them to use. Thinking of this, Bromon smiled and said, "So, gentlemen, what do you think about my proposal this morning? As a condition for ending the war with the Ice Fortress, your country must send all level 4 ability users to the League of Stars bases all over the world to carry out peacekeeping activities. At the same time, your country's military must destroy all nuclear and subnuclear weapons." Hearing this, the faces of all the family leaders changed. Even Zhang Yanheng and Li Wei's tone became hesitant. Seeing this, a trace of impatience flashed in Bruman's heart. He said coldly, "Gentlemen, you may not have figured out the situation. If it weren't for the pressure from the League of Stars, I'm afraid that within a week, the Fire Dragon Vanguard would have broken through Tianjing City under the leadership of 4 level 5 ability users. However, the prerequisite for all of this is that the Xia must join the League of Stars and become a member of our country. Otherwise," Li Wei, who was at the side, immediately chuckled and said, "Mr. Blumen, this is a serious matter, and it's not something we could decide casually. We need more discussion. Zhang Yinheng also looked at Bromon with a fawning smile and kept trying to curry favor with him. In the conference room, Wang Chong was the furthest away from Bromon. At this time, he was looking coldly at Li Wei and Zhang Yinheng, who kept trying to curry favor with Bromon. His heart was full of anger. However, in the face of the powerful strength of the League of Stars and the huge pressure from the Ice Fortress, he couldn't say anything. Beside him was the head of the Shao family, Shao Anren, and the head of the Gao family, Gao Tianwen. The three of them were not willing to introduce the forces of the League of Stars into the Xia. They were more inclined to rely on the power of Li Onping and the military to fight against the Ice Fortress in the north. At this moment, all of them were looking coldly at the other 6 family heads as they surrounded Broman. They were like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon, constantly trying to curry favor with him. However, there was a bottom line that the 9 of them had reached a consensus on. That was the disposal of nuclear weapons and subnuclear weapons. This might be the only means that ordinary people in the world could use to threaten a level 5 ability user. It was also the last thing a country could rely on. How could they destroy it casually? In fact, they believed that this was just a casual remark from the League of Stars, waiting for them to bargain. Just as the group of people were talking happily and even began to look forward to the future after Xia became a member of the League of Stars, someone quietly walked up to Wang Chong and said something. Wang Chong's eyes lit up, and he coughed and said slowly, "Now, the highest person in charge of the Xia Dragonfinch, Li Onping, is here. Mr. Bromon of the League of Stars, you could discuss the issue of ability users with him." Oh, there was a trace of expectation in Broman's eyes. It was finally time for him to wash away his shame. At this moment, the door was pushed open, and Li Onping strode in. He glanced at everyone present, and when he saw Bromon, he paused. "Hello, Mr. Li." Bromon sat there casually and said casually, "I didn't expect you to become the person in charge of the Xia Dragonfinch." Let me put it simply, all the level 4 ability users under you must report to Dongyang within 7 days. As for you, because you killed the Fire Dragon Vanguard's war hero, Lady, you violated the non-aggression treaty and must come with me to the headquarters of the League of Stars to be judged. Li Wei, Zhang Yinheng, and Song Guozhong all looked at Li Onping expectantly. They were either thinking about how to control Li Onping and make him their ace fighter, or thinking about how to tear Li Onping into pieces and turn him into ashes. Li Onping just casually glanced at Bromon and Deer behind him, and then said, "What if I don't agree?" Huh. Bromon seemed to have expected that Li Onping wouldn't agree so easily. He just looked at Li Onping with a smile and said, "The League of Stars represents the highest level of ability users in the world. You may think you're very strong, but in the League of Stars, your strength is at most above average. To be honest, I admire your potential, so I'm giving you a decent chance here. I'll ask you one last time. Do you agree or not?" Li Onping sneered and said, "If my strength is above average in the League of Stars, then I'm very curious. What is your position in the League of Stars?" Bromon shook his head, and a trace of resentment flashed in his eyes. He smiled helplessly and ordered Deer behind him, "Go ahead, don't kill him." Deer stood up, smiled at Li Onping, and shouted, "Boy, kneel down first." Before he finished speaking, a spiritual wave that was hard to see with the naked eye had already shot out from his mind, rushing toward Li Onping's brain. Chapter 133. Seeing that his spiritual wave hit Li Onping's head without any fancy moves, Dill sneered. As long as the ability level was lower than his, once they were hit by his spiritual wave, they would completely obey his orders. No matter how strong their spirit and will were, it would be useless. Dill smiled cruelly and said, "Did you hear that? Hurry up and kowtow to admit your mistake, then break your own hands and feet." A confident smile appeared on Blumen's face. This was his confidence in Deer's ability. He had seen too many potential aptitude users being killed by Deer as soon as they met because their abilities were suppressed by Deer. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that Bromon himself was a 4th level ability user, He wouldn't have dared to bring Dill out alone. However, in the face of Dill's order, Li Onping just tilted his head and looked at Dill coldly. Do you want to die? A deep chill rushed towards Bromon. Dill and Bromon looked at Li Onping in shock, especially Dill, who was at a loss. What's going on? Can you still control yourself? Seeing that Li Onping was looking at him with a puzzled face, Dill was surprised. The next moment, he immediately pointed at Li Onping and said, "Kneel down. Lick the soles of my feet like a dog. Get on the ground and come to me." Deer pointed at Li Onping with his index finger and scolded him. At the same time, he kept sending God waves to Li Onping's head. However, the more he used his ability, the more panicked he became because Li Onping didn't respond at all. Under the surprised gazes of the people around him, Dill suddenly pointed at Li Wei and said, "Lie on the ground." Li Wei, who was sitting upright, suddenly lay on the ground and then lay motionless on the ground like a dog. My ability didn't fail, but why is Li Onping not under my control? Thinking of this, Dill suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He thought of the worst possibility. Is he not a third-level ability user at all? Even if he is a fourth-level ability user, he can't completely ignore the influence of my ability. Could it be he is a level 5 ability user? The surrounding people also understood that Deer's ability was to manipulate the human body, but for some reason, his ability had no effect on Li Onping. Li Onping coldly looked at Dill and said, "Since you're so happy, you can pay with your life." Seeing Li Onping walking over, Dill thought of his guess and retreated in panic. He anxiously said, "I was wrong. I'm willing to apologize to you. Please let me go." Li Onping did not stop because of Deer's begging for mercy. But when he was about to reach Deer, Bromon stepped out and stopped him. "Mr. Li, what do you want to do? Dill is a warrior of our League of Stars. Do you want to start a war with the League of Stars?" However, in the face of Bruman's words, Li Onping only said 2 words softly, "Get lost." When Li Onping opened his mouth, a white light shot out from his mouth and hid in front of Bromon. The huge force sent Bromon flying with a bang. Li Onping stepped over the place where he had just been standing and arrived in front of Dill. This move was Li Onping's breath attack. With Li Onping's current physical fitness, even if he didn't use any moves, the white breath from his mouth was enough to kill someone within 10 meters. From this point, it could be seen how terrifying Li Onping's physical fitness was. In the face of Li Onping, who was close at hand, Dill's eyes were filled with fear. He shouted, "You can't kill me. I'm a member of the League of Stars. If you kill me, you'll be an enemy of the entire League of Stars. The whole de Xia will be destroyed because of you." Wang Chong could not help but stand up and shout, "Li Onping, calm down." Gao Yinheng and Song Guozhong shouted, "Li Onping, are you crazy?" Bromon, who had been beaten down by Li Onping, also stood up and said with a livid face, "Li Onping, if you dare to do anything, the League of Stars will not let you go." But in the face of these people and these words, Li Onping's expression did not change at all. His finger slowly pointed at Dill. At this time, Dill also knew that begging for mercy was useless. With a roar, his entire body erupted with the psychic energy unique to level 4 ability users. He raised his fists and smashed them towards Li Onping. Faced with Dill's all-out punch, Li Onping only slightly increased the speed of his finger. His fingertips brought about an afterimage, already flashing past Dill's fist and pointing at his forehead. The tremendous power was transmitted to Dill's head through his fingertips, and then it exploded at that point, instantly shattering Dill's brain under his skull. Shua! A light sword pierced through Li Onping's body, but it only pierced through an afterimage. Li Onping instantly appeared in front of Bromon, one hand grabbing the other's hand that was holding the light sword, the other hand gripping Bruman's neck, pressing him against the wall. The power that was like a landslide or a tsunami made Bromon unable to resist at all. "Li Onping, what are you trying to do?" Faced with Li Onping, who was almost within reach, Bromon said in a panic. Li Onping looked at him coldly, saying word by word, "I don't know what kind of madness your subordinate went through, suddenly attacking me during the meeting, and was already slaughtered by me. Do you also want to follow in his footsteps?" When faced with Li Onping's questioning, Bromon suppressed the evil fire in his heart with great difficulty, saying, "Dill, him attacking you is indeed his fault. I will give you an explanation." "No need." Li Onping released his hands, turning around and walking towards the door. "Go back and tell your superiors to stop using these despicable and senseless methods. Send some true experts over to talk with me. As for you, you are not qualified." After saying this, Li Onping already walked out the door, only leaving behind a resentful Bromon, as well as the 9 family patriarchs. This time, everyone, including Wang Chong, looked at Li Onping's back figure like they were looking at a dead man. The next time a League of Stars sent an even stronger expert to Xia, it would be the time when Li Onping lost his life. This was what everyone present thought. No one believed that Li Onping alone could face the entire League of Stars. Even Wang Chong originally only wanted to borrow Li Onping's strength to negotiate conditions with the League of Stars, to prevent him from completely infiltrating Xia. They didn't expect that Li Onping would use the most crude, most barbaric, and most direct method. However, what they didn't know was that Li Onping was incomparably looking forward to the League of Stars sending people over. It would be best if they could send 1 or 2 level 5 ability users. Thinking of this, Li Onping's eyes revealed a bloodthirsty look. A few days later, in a high-end sanatorium in Tianjing, Zhang Kuang's head was wrapped in layers of gauze. He lay on the bed and viciously said, "This brat, I must tear him to pieces." "It won't be your turn." Li Tai, who was wrapped up like a mummy, said darkly, "This kid has offended the League of Stars. I'm afraid it won't be long before he dies." Beside their beds, there were 5 or 6 children of influential families who had come to visit them. Giggling and laughing, they talked about Li Onping's situation one by one. "That's right. I heard from my dad that the 9 great royal families all treat him as a dead man now. No one dares to go against him. That's right. This brat Li Onping's strength is still very strong. Now that he has offended the League of Stars, naturally no one wants to go against a powerful dead man." But hearing this news, Zhang Kuang's expression was still ferocious. He said, "No, I can't let him go like this. I want revenge." He said to a man beside his bed, "Brother, help me." That man was called Zhang Hai. He was the eldest grandson of the Zhang family, and also the one who would inherit the family business in the future. Hearing his brother's words, he frowned and said, "That brat is a dead man. Why do you have to go against him?" "No, I can't let him die so easily." Zhang Kuang said bitterly, "I still have to deal with his relatives and friends." Didn't the old men investigate his relatives and friends thoroughly? I want him to die one by one in front of Li Onping. And what he's doing now, I want him to be unable to complete it. I want him to die in pain. Alas, who told you to be my brother? I'll help you this time." Zhang Hai nodded and said. Hearing his brother's sudden agreement, Zhang Kuang said with some worry, "Brother, that Li Onping is not weak. You have to be careful." Hearing this, Zhang Hai smiled confidently and said, "Brother, this time I'll teach you that personal strength is always the lowest level of strength. In the face of the rolling general trend of the world, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It's useless. Don't always be obsessed with improving your ability in the future. For example, this time, Li Onping has no relationship, no background, and no channels. He's like a rootless duckweed. Such a person may be able to get a good position for a while by relying on luck and ability, but if he can't find a backer, then the final result will be nothing more than cannon fodder. Originally, I thought he was a smart man. Who would have thought that he would take the initiative to offend the League of Stars? Now it seems that he's just a reckless man. Like Xiao Laikong, he's a good-for-nothing. If he doesn't want all his subordinates, friends, and relatives to be implicated after his death, he must be at the mercy of others. What's more, he may not know who set him up until his death. Good. Brother, I want to see his remorseful and desperate look with my own eyes." Zhang Kuang said excitedly. Zhang Hai slowly said, "Don't worry. I'll help you. I'll make sure he's badly battered in less than 7 days." Chapter 134. 3 days later, in a military hospital in Tianjin, Xia Yunyun looked at Xia Laikong in the hospital bed, speechless. Xia Yunyun had been visiting Xia Laikong in the ward almost every day. Unfortunately, Xia Laikong looked like he was in a vegetative state. Since the last time he woke up, he showed no signs of waking up. Although Xia Yunyun was anxious, there was nothing she could do. While she was looking after Xia Laikong, the door of the ward behind her opened. Xia Yunyun turned her head and saw that it was Li Onping. "You're here." Xia Yunyun stood up and looked at Li Onping cautiously. At this time, Li Onping was far behind Xia Yunyun in terms of status and strength, so he was not as open as before. "Yes." Li Onping nodded, walked to the bed, and put a box of fruit basket on the bedside table. "Sorry, I've been busy recently. I only found time to visit him now." "It's okay. If it weren't for you supporting my grandfather, he would have been transferred to another hospital." Xia Yunyun looked at Li Onping sincerely. When she met his gaze, she could not help but lower her head and whisper, "I've wanted to thank you for a long time." The two exchanged a few more words, but Xia Yunyun seemed to have grown up overnight. Every word she said to Li Onping was not as unscrupulous as before. However, even Li Onping could feel the hidden bitterness that leaked out of his eyes. "Where have you been living recently?" Xia Yunyun summoned up her courage and said, "I've been keeping your room at home. Aren't you coming back to live?" Just when Li Onping felt that it was not easy to answer this question, Scorpion suddenly came in from outside the door. He bent over Li Onping and said a few words. Ever since Li Onping reorganized the Dragon Sparrow Guards, Scorpion had been by Li Onping's side as an assistant. After hearing Scorpion's words, Li Onping frowned. Xia Yunyun saw it and said, "If you have something urgent, you can leave first." Li Onping nodded. "It is indeed a little troublesome. Then I'll leave first. If you need any help, just contact me directly." After that, Li Onping left with Scorpion. But before he left the ward, he suddenly stopped and turned to Xia Yunyun, saying, "Before Xia Laikong fell asleep, he told me that he would fall into a deep sleep to heal his injuries. I don't think he lied to me." After saying this, Li Onping left without looking back. Xia Yunyun was left alone, looking at the ward with disappointment. Li Onping walked quickly in the ward. Scorpion hurriedly said, "A total of 50 Dragon Sparrow Guards have been sent out to capture criminals with superpowers across the country. But the 5 members who went to Gushin City have lost contact with them for more than 24 hours. Li Onping said without turning his head, "Let Lu Sheng arrange it and send more people to find out what happened." Scorpion nodded to show that he understood. He then said, "The location of the Biology Research Institute has been chosen and the basic equipment has been set up, but there are some problems that Mr. Wei wants you to take a look at." Understood. Li Onping walked quickly to the hospital door. He had already handed over the Biology Research Institute to Wei Zhuan's people. Everyone in charge of this matter was monitored by Li Qian's ability. Those who were suspected of having problems were directly eliminated. The Great Xiao Dragonfinch did not send any staff members to help either. They only took out 10 people from the Dragon Sparrow Guards to be in charge of defense. Every 6 months, they would take out 10 people from the Dragon Sparrow Guards to be in charge of the Biology Research Institute. Just as Li Onping was about to walk out of the hospital door, a voice suddenly came from behind and stopped Li Onping. They saw a figure rushing out from the corridor. Wherever he passed, a gust of wind blew, blowing the people around him off their feet. It was not until the figure appeared in front of Li Onping that he revealed himself. "How long do you plan to let us rest?" Sun Hao looked at Li Onping and asked. His arm, which had been vaporized by Lei Di, had been replaced by a metal prosthesis. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. "Don't bring me along. I still want to rest for a year and a half." Qin Duo sat in the wheelchair and said weakly. The wheelchair moved on its own without any wind, like a small scooter. With the help of telekinesis, it moved in the direction of the two. During the battle with Lei Di, his body was struck by lightning and his lower body was completely paralyzed. Li Onping looked at the two of them and smiled. "Looks like you guys are recovering well. You're not the only one working hard." Sun Hao smiled confidently. He waved his hand, and a trash can in the distance suddenly started shaking violently. Then, it suddenly flew up and was caught by Sun Hao's mechanical arm. Li Onping was surprised. Electromagnetic force? Sun Hao nodded. That's right. I'm holding back my anger to find trouble with the Fire Dragon Vanguard. Although Lei Di was killed by you, the hatred between the Qian Duo and I can't just let it go. Li Onping smiled happily. Okay, then you guys report to Lu Sheng at the base today. There's a lot of work to be done. 2 hours later, Li Onping arrived at one of the Xia Dragonfinch's bases in the suburbs. 1 kilometer away, there were already barbed wire fences, all kinds of bunkers and fortifications. Other than the 10 Dragon Sparrow guards, there were also 1,000 regular soldiers in the base. It could be considered as solid as an iron bucket. Li Onping originally wanted to build a new base to be used as a biological research facility. However, time was too tight now. The pressure from all sides required him to have more power. Therefore, he directly chose one of the Xia Dragonfinch's bases to be the biological research facility. On the surface, it was to research the evolution of ability users, medical equipment, and other projects. Secretly, it was to carry out the ability user cloning project. Of course, only the core researchers in the base would know about this. Moreover, all the personnel in the base were monitored by Li Onping using Li Qian's ability. There were also 10 Dragon Sparrow guards standing guard. If there was any situation, they would notify Li Onping through the encrypted satellite phone. Now, regardless of whether it was the 9 great royal families or other powers, none of them knew the true purpose of Li Onping's biological research facility. In a laboratory on the 12th floor of the research facility, Li Onping and a white-haired old man were walking and talking. Wei Guangguan stayed on the first floor of the basement, waiting for Li Onping to summon him. Even he didn't know the purpose of Li Onping's biological research facility. He was only in charge of the preparatory work. Unbelievable. If you guys didn't tell me, I would never believe that ability users existed in this world. The white-haired old man's face was filled with fanaticism. Copying ability users, cloning their abilities. Once this experiment succeeds, the entire human society will improve by leaps and bounds. The history of the world will change because of us. The old man's name was Sherwin. He was a top-notch talent in the field of biological genetics and DNA. However, his previous work had never had any interactions with ability users. Under Wei Zhuan's probing, Sherwin was eventually invited over with a high reward, the most complete set of information on ability users and research equipment that would grant all requests. Li Onping nodded. He was not as fanatical as the old man before him. He only asked calmly, "How's the first experiment going? Come take a look." Sherwin became agitated and quickly walked toward the door of an experiment room. He swiped his finger across space, and a wall slowly opened up. Behind the wall was a strange container that looked like a glass pillar. It was filled with a strange blue liquid. Lady was currently soaked completely in it. Sherwin looked at Lady in the container agitatedly and said, "Where on earth did you guys get this sample from? His cells are too strange. They're like eels that can store electricity, but they're many times stronger than eels." I did a rough calculation. If all the cells in his body were to be fully charged, the amount of electricity he would have would be comparable to that of a nuclear power plant. You don't have to care about where he got it from. Li Onping assessed the clone in the container carefully and said unhappily, "This clone doesn't have any abilities?" "No." Sherwin's tone was filled with regret. "Do you know that with the current technology, cloning a person is already an extremely simple matter? With sufficient equipment, a sample of DNA, a cost of several tens of thousands of dollars, and 16 hours of time, we'll be able to get a cloned body. But it's just a body." Sherwin sighed. "Ability user cloning. This is a completely new field for me. I need more time and more materials." Li Onping said calmly, "Don't worry. You'll have more and more materials for research. Also, I need a lot of equipment and personnel. Why aren't they here yet? I've been raising these requests for almost a week. You don't have to worry about this. We just need some time. We'll send them to you very soon." Li Onping took a few more glances at the clone and then said to Sherwin, "Before that, use the equipment here to clone more Lei Di for me." They'll only be clones with no abilities. What do you need them for? I have a use for them. You just need to do as I say." As if he could hear the coldness in Li Onping's words, Sherwin did not probe any further. From the moment he came into contact with this plan, he understood that his life would be completely in the hands of this man before him. However, as long as he could complete this research that transcended the century, he would have no regrets even if he died. In the Research Institute's basement level, Wei Zhuan looked at Li Onping with some uneasiness. Li Onping asked, "What's going on? Why are the equipment that we've requested taking so long to arrive?" Wei Zhuan said awkwardly, "We'd already ordered them, but a group of people suddenly charged out and snatched the things away. Originally, we wanted to continue ordering, but it seemed like they were targeting us. Most of the high-end equipment was sold out." Li Onping frowned and said, "Forget it then. I'll send someone to investigate the equipment. What about the researchers? Most of them have agreed to join us, but I might need to use some methods on some of them," Wei Zhuan said with uncertainty. "Don't bother about those that aren't too important. As for the others," Li Onping stroked his chin and said, "Just do as you wish. How about this? I'll send some more people to you." He turned and called Scorpion in and instructed, "Pick 2 people from the Dragon Sparrow Guards on the base. They'll be in charge of helping Wei Zhuan gather the researchers until all the necessary personnel have arrived." Suddenly, Li Onping's phone rang, and Li Qian's voice rang out, "Sir, your elder brother and sister-in-law in Zhongdu were attacked by robbers. Qin Yong from Jadeite City was also shot." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.